All right, folks, if you can take a seat, please.
It's not a picture. I know. I was a little ticked when I saw it.
Good evening. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the City Council of City of Marysville to order Tuesday, February 9th
I hope.
at 6:56 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mr. Simmons? Here. Mr. Buttacavoli?
Here.
Ms. McKenzie? Here. Mr. Hudson? Here. Mr. Samayoa?
Here. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to stand and help me with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Let's move to item 4. I'd like to ask our city manager, Ms. Brown, if there are any changes to the agenda.
There are none.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion's approved with a vote of 5-0. We're going to table item 6A for our next meeting. And let's move to item 7. Item 7 is a community consent calendar forum. Individuals wishing to address the City Council concerning consent calendar items or on matters not already in the agenda, we invite those to make oral comments up to 3 minutes. When you're called, we do ask you to please go to the podium and give your name clearly for audio recording. We request that you address your comments to the council and not to the audience. We do let you know that by state law, the council is not permitted to undertake any actions or discussions on any items not appearing on the posted agenda. If you like a response from the council, we do ask you to please fill out a speaker's card and you'll be contacted within the next few days. I know a lot of folks are here for item 8G. I know that it will be pulled and added to discussion and calendar. So aside from that, I'd like to invite folks to comment on other items in the consent agenda or something not on the agenda.
Hello, members of the council. My name is Dale Whitmore, live in Marysville. 3 quick items. We have 2 handicapped outhouses at the respite site on 14th Street. I think it's a waste of city money to have 2 outhouses out there when only 1 is needed. On the consent agenda, back in July, I found one of the old ones. It states that a council member, a member of the public, or the city manager may request to have the matter removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action. I see that the phrase, "a member of the public," has been removed. I'd like to see that put back in. I'm not sure why it got removed. It certainly makes it difficult for the public to oversee city government when things are put on the consent agenda, and the member of the public cannot remove it to talk about it. And then my third item is on January 4th, 2019, myself and several members of the Marysville Tree Growing Volunteers delivered a letter asking to be on the January 15th, 2019 City Council agenda to discuss planting trees in city parks. Councilman Simmons and Hudson both signed the letter to place the item on the January 15th agenda. I was denied that request, and I'm rather irritated about it. I have never been given an opportunity. It's never been put on the agenda. And I went through all the steps. Section 229 of the Marysville Municipal Code gives the step-by-step how to do it. I did that, and I have yet to hear from anybody as to when I can come up and speak to the city council on this issue. I'd appreciate a meeting with someone this next week from the city council to discuss this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Raylyn Butcher, and I'm an advocate and a COC member, as well as a executive officer of the newly formed homeless union here in Marysville. And I'd like to address you with the crisis that we're having right now with the river rising. As you know, the water's high, and it's been mighty high, and a lot of the camps have already been pretty much flooded. And you also know that there's still people on the banks also. We know how the water comes up, the water goes down. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not the next day, but it's going to come back. There's still people living on the riverbanks with nowhere to go but over the levee. That means they're coming into town. I've spoke with you before on this issue, and there's nothing been resolved about it. We're going to have even a twice as bad problem because there's so many more. We have now people coming from other counties that are coming here, and the situation is really getting out of hand. I'm only one person. I work with these people 24/7, and I will stand up for them every day if I have to. Also, the people that were at the, I call it sleep zone behind Juvenile Hall, they were given tickets, I do believe it was the 13th of February, for their vehicles being off the road, off the pavement. Those are some of these people's homes, okay? And they were asked to leave the one at the other end of town, the rest zone, and move to the other one. They were fine up until just a couple days back, or last week, and they were given tickets for being off the road. Well, I had spoke to someone before, and I do believe it was you all, and about possibly moving, if they parked their RVs outside of the fence, if that was okay. Well, apparently that's not okay. I need to know where these people are going to go, because they're just going to come over the levee, and you're going to have we've got enough problems already, and it's like, I'm only one person. And you all know that know me on this council. I've been trying my hardest since the removal back in the encampments when you had us all move. Now today, the problem's still here. It's 2 years. I need to know where these people can go. Right now, when they got their warning, and apparently it was Yuba County Sheriff that gave the warning notices, which then I was told that the county has nothing to do with that it's the city. Well, I had moved them to St. John's Church in the alley, and they're there, but the reverend there said they could only be there for a number of days. Those days are up, so
Thank you, ma'am. You have your 3
I need
minutes.
to address possibly the chief of police, which is also the president for the Consortium for Care for the Homeless, and you about what we can do. Where can these people go? So,
Thank you, ma'am. Your 3 minutes are up.
And get an answer if I could, please.
If you can fill out one of the speaker's card,
Okay.
and we'll get information back to you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Brian Brown. I'm Executive Officer of the Homeless Union in Marysville, also the Tri-Counties Homeless Union Organizing Council of the State of California. I want to know first on my answer response, who's responsible for the flood evacuees out of the city REAP site in the county-owned property? They need to be addressed now. I'd also like the answer to, do you know the Boise, Idaho versus Martin decision, what that entails? If you don't, you should. You cannot criminalize people homeless that have no place or a bed to go. You cannot threaten them with tickets. You cannot threaten them to take their property, to sit, to lie, to step. That is illegal. And if you don't know, you do now. The police cannot harass them. That is just the same sense as not being able to understand the law. More than money, we have people. The people are human beings, and at this time, the humanitarian effort that we need for what's outside of St. John's is the responsibility of the county and the city. You got to come together and do something. We can't. You guys have the resorts, you have vacant buildings, they're sleeping this far outside of a vacant building, when actually they could just be on that side. And it's cold out there. You could go out there yourselves, but I'm sure you won't. But it's really a decision that I think that you guys need to get together, because the people are not demanding anything that any human being wouldn't require. That's clothes, shelter, or anything else. The survival mood that they're living in all the time cannot leave them any time for security or any time for belonging to anything. And at top, they don't have a meaning for nothing. So at the survival rate would just keep on with no answers, just a blank stare. Oh, well, it's not my problem. Well, it is. We're community residents here. We have a matter, we have a right, we have a voice. And from now on, we're going to be spreading that voice, and we're not going to overbound, we're just going to undermine. And we're just going to make sure that you're held accountable for everything that you do, everything. Because accountability is all we have, and our word is really all we do have as men on this planet. And as women, we have the same. And children, high school kids, children, they got to learn from us. If we're not a great example of anything other than what we are for the immediate time, we're nothing for the future at all. I mean, you got to realize it's not their fault. It's not anybody's fault. People are human beings. And again, I say the humanitarian effort. We've been up and down. We've been up and down, and we've seen the Paradise Fire. Everybody kind of forgets about the Paradise Fire. Well, what they did to them in Chico, the homeless union went up there, and they went and they served the Board of Supervisors to make sure that they can have a place to go, not into the street. They prolonged that, and we did get 80 people to where they're going to get housed, and that is another situation. Housing is not temporary shelter. Temporary shelter, in the definition of the code that you have in the ordinance, the temporary shelter is a camp facility. I don't know if you're aware of that. Well, it's illegal to have camp facilities like 14.4. Any type of temporary shelter in those words are illegal. Whew. Ain't true. Thank you, sir.
Good evening. I'm Stephanie Steele from the Hope for the Heart Relief Center, and I received phone calls from, we've been serving the fire relief victims, we've been serving the homeless, and we've been serving the poor. And the day the tickets were given out, we started receiving phone calls. They said, we understand that we can't stay here, but we don't know where to go. And I'm grateful to those who gave temporary permission for us to park in front of 14 Forward and over by Whitaker Hall and Sheriff's Posse. However, that was just a temporary solution. And then I'm grateful to the California Homeless Coalition for arranging St. John's Episcopal Church. I'm also working on a church in Yuba City. But again, these are just temporary measures. I'm working on a proposal right now, something that might possibly be feasible as a long-term solution, and I'm hoping to present that like at the next Homeless Coalition meeting. I'm talking to these people, we're providing them food, we're providing them clothing in the interim. It's very, very cold out there. And in the process, I'm finding out that most of them are registered with the agency to get them back into society. My mind's doing a blank right now. Coordinated entry, that's it. So they are, and we're working with them to see that they can get the things necessary for them to move on in their lives and to have a stable environment. So I respectfully am requesting that a waiver be put on the tickets that were passed out, because these people are just, they're on limited incomes and they're just trying to survive. The ones that I've been privileged to work with, they're respectful. They're helpful. They're not trying to be a problem for anybody, and they're grateful for any of the help that they can get. And I'm grateful to be working with them, honestly. And so with that said, I want to, it's a community issue, and it needs a community solution. So I'm respectfully submitting that tonight. I don't know exactly the process to present a proposal, but I'm working on things, and there are people who care that are really trying to come up with a long-term solution, not an instant one. But we do, as was spoken previously, we do need somewhere else until something long-term can be settled. We need a place where they can be safe. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Robert McLean. I'm recently among the forgotten. I actually am a Ponderosa fire evacuee about 18 months ago. Still have yet to receive that beautiful FEMA check that's gold-plated. But I wanted to address a couple of issues. One is the earlier topic that you guys visited as far as your analysis. I think analysis is over with. You just described yet another bureaucratic monstrosity as far as funding a new analysis that has no exit date. You don't even know what the exit date for the last one was. The word is antiquated is the word that you guys were all looking for as far as the previous analysis. So what I'd like to do instead is like put boots on the ground. And the thing is that you got a lot of homeless people, but they represented the workforce, and they don't come to you as beggars and with a quiet voice. We were put out for various reasons, but it's been very difficult to stay alive in a bureaucratic-filled world like the one that we have. For example, I only have 3 minutes to talk to you, but you don't have to respond to me. I would say that you should have 3 minutes to respond to me when I'm done. If you create the rules for yourselves, then why can't we enforce those same rules upon you? So as far as I would like explanations. I don't want to just come up with some diatribe or whatever you want to call it. What I would like to know is, okay, for example, we got all these vacant buildings, and we have all these craftsmen, people that have specialized fields that are now out of work, that are looking for a cigarette on the ground, for crying out loud. And they could actually fix these old structures and create facades such as the ones you alluded to in Denver, is actually where it is, where they make it look like it's old throughout the 16th Street Mall. But in that case, it's nothing but a facade. It's a freestanding brick structure or substructure that has no purpose whatsoever except aesthetic. I would say that that's pretty comparable to the proposal that you just did and how quickly you funded something that has no particular strategy. That was the most pathetic slideshow I've ever freaking seen in my life as a salesman. I mean, didn't have any animation, didn't have anything that was measurable. I would say that performance bogeys, as a previous businessman, if you want to know how things are going, you have to have specific things that need to be met, specific criteria that demonstrates a measurable improvement. That is how you get things done. You tie that into self-management, where a person can take pride in their work, like they did with these pews that we have here when there's reverence for this. Instead of a snowstorm of BS that has no definable purpose, I would say that what we should do is help each other. There's a lot of wasted resources and a lot of things that are going dormant. They're nothing more than an eyesore and a danger as far as these beautiful brick buildings that have withstood so much devastation from so many different destructive elements. But we could restore those things, and if they were used as temporary shelter by those who have a wishful purpose in life, who want to make the world a better place, then they would improve those, which would then increase the value of the property and create desirable, like we could do a walking tour.
Sir, your 3 minutes are up. I appreciate your points. Thank you, sir.
Well, I wish to invite anyone else to address anything that they feel is important, because the only way that we're going to be heard is one at a time, 3 minutes.
Sir, you too.
So I would
Thank you for your time, sir.
And work together, because we're all in this together.
Thank you, sir.
You'll hear from me again.
I do want to just mention to folks that just spoke, I know that the consortium has worked really hard on bringing millions of dollars to put together for affordable housing, for coordinated entry, for sheltering. So I know they're doing a tremendous job for that, and I appreciate their efforts being led by our Chief of Police, Sachs.
It was a monstrosity.
All right, let's move forward, please.
Instead of congratulating yourself, you'll be looking to see what is wrong and fixing that.
Problem right this second.
Before those people are freezing as bad as we are on the streets because they can't have power.
Sir, we need order.
Time's up, guys. Respect the time, please. Thank you.
I'm not a member of the union, and I speak for myself as a resident here, as an evacuee.
We won't be silent.
Anymore. We won't be silent anymore. We won't be silent.
This is what my voice sounds like. Okay.
I was saying, I want to tell you, it's about our Constitution, okay? I'll put this Hill Democrat. Write it down, jot it down. Jot it down on a piece of paper. I'm talking about peace, not hate. First, you have to sit at a chair, at a table, before you can write upon that paper. A pen is mightier as a sword, but when it runs out, you have to buy another. Pen, it runs out of ink. Not so mighty, but it is mightier than a pencil. The lead breaks, and you need a pencil sharpener. But the eagle feather is mightier than both because it was dipped into a jar of ink and wrote the Constitution. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from the public?
My name's Renee Baker. I work with Stephanie Steele, who was just up here, and thank you for hearing me. I go out every Wednesday and feed the homeless, and I get an opportunity to talk to them and hear their stories, and I realize that there are a group that add to problems in this community. But there's also a very large group that does not. They're trying to stay hidden, they're trying to stay out of the public, they're trying to survive without being a nuisance. There are those that collect trash and do things. There are others that are willing to keep their places clean. And they're construction workers, they're disabled people, and I'm going to attempt to work with Stephanie Steele in regards to finding a way to come up with leasing some land from the county that's not currently being used. We can put out some gardens that are above ground that don't require very much effort, but the homeless can do the gardening and we can feed them. We can help them get into 14 Forward, or we can help them get into One Stop, where those that have fallen down are not forgotten, and that as we are trying to touch one another in our community, that they're just not overlooked, that we can allow them to participate, not just giving them a handout, but helping them to farm, to keep the place clean, put in some porta potties, have some access to water, give them one hot meal a day. They can work for 3 hours a day. There's lots of solutions to helping these folks, revamping Peachtree Mall or something, where we can get them out of the river bottom so they're not messing up the banks and doing trash. But I talk to these people every Wednesday, and each one of them have a heartbreaking story when you have to live out there for 2 or 3 years. And I know there's compassion, and I know that there's a lot of rules and regulations and policies that have to be taken care of, and I don't know what they are. But I would like to be able to come back and begin to work with the council to see what we can do as a community to address the needs as best as can be done. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you
Have a
for
good
your
evening.
time. Anyone else in the public like to make a comment? Seeing none, let's move to item 8. Item 8 is consent calendar. All matters of consent calendar are considered to be routine and therefore approved by one motion, unless any member of the council or city manager first requests that a matter be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion. As I mentioned, we're moving 8G, and we'll put it above 10A. Aside from that, is any other items that like to be removed by any council member?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Motion's approved with a vote of 5-0. Now let's move to discussion and action. Oh, yes, thank you.
Ordinance number 1410, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Marysville, California, amending portions of Chapter 6.04 of the Marysville Municipal Code entitled Sewers and Sewage Disposal.
Thank you. We got item 9. We have a public hearing. Public hearing is ordinance amending section 18.67.030. It's a conditional permitted use of chapter 18.67 commercial cannabis activities of the title 18 zoning of the Marysville Municipal Code. The recommendation is to hold a hearing and receive public comments regarding an amendment section 18.67.030, conditional permitted use of chapter 18.67 commercial cannabis activity of title 18 zoning of the Marysville Municipal Code. Action may include a motion to waive first reading and introduction of ordinance 1412. Presentation from staff.
Good evening again, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. The item before you tonight is a public hearing to recommend amendment of Section 18.67030, conditionally permitted use of the commercial cannabis activity ordinance. As you may be aware, on November 2016, the City of Marysville through passed Measure F, which was a progressive cannabis commercial activity tax associated to all locally authorized cannabis-related businesses. The language was only specific to 2 types of commercial cannabis activity. Staff would like to point out that is consistent with the measures that were being proposed at that time. Due to how new the local regulations and the state regulations were, the City of Marysville was one of the progressive cities in adopting a measure to identify potential tax revenue from commercial cannabis activity. What has happened, of course, is that the state of California had got a hold of the regulations and has expanded upon it and added subcomponents and subsections and different criteria for business operations that are more detailed than what was traditionally looked upon by local jurisdictions that wanted to move forward with these tax measures. So not consistent with other jurisdictions around the same time frame. What we're dealing with is identification of certain commercial businesses that were not specifically called out in the Measure F, but are associated with unique activity that does identify a need for funding source for their impact on the community. So staff is recommending that as part of the cannabis ordinance that any business that's not subject to the Measure F, which is the Chapter 5.12 of the City Municipal Code, so any business, commercial cannabis activity business that's not currently regulated under Chapter 5.12 would be required to enter into a development agreement in conjunction with whatever city approval would be associated with it. Again, dispensaries and cultivation are specifically called out and have a specific tax and revenue regarding those and specific timelines which were recently amended for payment of those fees. So what we are looking at is businesses that were not identified originally in 2016 that are commercial cannabis related activities that do generate impact to the city services and that have an associated cost that should be recouped by the city. So the appropriate mechanism for that is a development agreement. And for those who are unaware what a development agreement is, it is a contract between a jurisdiction and an applicant that sets a certain guidelines or standards that will be held, that business or applicant will be held to. One being in an introduction of a community benefit fee to offset those unique costs for those businesses. In exchange for that community benefit fee, they have assurances that their business is a viable business and it may operate within the city. So staff is recommending that you open the public hearing, accept public comments, and recommends amendment of the cannabis-related activity zoning ordinance, again, 18.67.030, requiring a development agreement as part or in conjunction with any conditional use permit or other city approval for cannabis-related activities not subject to Chapter 5.12, which is the Measure F tax. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Steve, clarifying his memo and ordinance from the council?
Just one question through the chair. Looking at the schedule, Mr. Mayor, it says action include motion to waive first reading and introduce ordinance for second reading. But yet if I look at the staff report, it doesn't indicate that as a recommendation. Is that the recommendations? What's on the agenda?
It's to introduce first reading.
Yeah, it says action may include a motion to waive first reading and introduce ordinance number 1412 for second reading. But if I look at the staff report, that's not entered in the recommendations.
I think that's just a matter of a procedure that if we want to waive the first reading, we can do that.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is making sure that if I'm the motion maker through a parliamentarian, would I use the agenda definition?
Use the agenda.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Without this language here.
Okay,
So you-
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Oh, for your information, excuse me, he says that parliamentarian says we'll use the action on the agenda excluding the for second reading.
Correct. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Does this, it's kind of in reference to the testing lab?
Yeah, testing, transport, anything else that may be associated in current or near future that may be discussed by council and enter it into a local regulations.
Thank you.
But I think it's tied to what the states allow to, businesses that the states allow to conduct, including transportation, delivery, or whatever other manufacturing of things. I think that's what this is kind of, it's derived from that, correct?
Yes, but it still retains local control on what we allow to occur in our city.
Correct.
We're just providing that funding mechanism to offset those impacts at the will of council.
Through the chair, I understand the delivery clause in this. If we don't issue a license for delivery, then another city issues a license. We cannot restrict them from coming in on a public streets and transporting that, and we lose the tax on it. Is that correct?
I would defer to the chief of police or city attorney, but for 100% opinion on that, but from that is what I've heard, yes.
That is correct. If somebody is issued a license in another location, we cannot prohibit them from delivering cannabis on any public highway within our city.
And we lose the tax on it, is that right, Chief?
That's correct, because the tax base goes out of where the business license is held with that entity. So we cannot regulate it, and we do not reap the benefits of the tax or anything else of having that business within the location, so.
So it's not a matter of them, if they're picking up from one of our grows, it's a matter of where their business is and licensed?
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct. And it's still with their, with the Bureau of Cannabis Control, it's still with their legal review process, but like Steve said, or Mr. Prosser said, it's up to local control at this point. So what we're trying to do is help come around the corner and be ahead of it instead of just watching them drive on by and take that business out of our city. So we want to be up front and try to go after it, so.
Thank you.
And be able to regulate it.
Any other questions from council members? Seeing none, I'd like to open up to the public hearing. Any members of the public like to comment on this item?
A question, if I may, without standing up and all of my stuff here.
Can you state your name?
Yeah, Ted Langdale, Marysville. If the city does license a business that's delivery, but does not, or is there a process for the city to license out of city entities that would be delivering here and still reap some tax benefits?
I think that would be through what we're calling this, can someone answer that question, folks? Chief?
I don't have the specific answer to that. If they have a business license in a different area and to license them here as well to reap that benefit,
How would you reap the benefit if they're a business from somewhere?
I think I would defer to Steve on that one.
Well, there's two ways we would be able to regulate that. One, through land use. Let's say they have a physical presence in the city, and you as a council determine that it's an appropriate use in our jurisdiction to allow for delivery businesses. Then they would go through the conditional use permit process, the development agreement, and we'll set associate delivery costs, a portion of costs as applicable for the community benefit fee. For outside agency deliveries, that would be a little bit more difficult. We'd have to look into that on how we could potentially find a way to address that.
So they have to have established their location here in City of Marysville for us to be able to have either a community benefit fee or some type of development agreement with them.
And where does the sales tax go? To where the license, or the business is licensed? Or if it's delivered here, does the sales tax go here?
To the address of the location of the business.
Thank you.
Oh, sir?
Again, my name is Robert McLean. I want to address the previous issue, which is, I think, a way to make it attractive to people to conduct business. I've been in the marijuana business for quite a while, actually. But if we were to create a legal resource pool that was generated through the measurable taxing of the product, then as people deliver, let's say that they deliver things in Sacramento or in some other place that may not be the same guidelines. If law enforcement were made aware of the fact that they have a resource pool that represents a fraction of each sale from here, then that would give the transporters protection against unlawful confiscation and authorities wishing to benefit from the residents here. And then by doing that, if people knew that there was an advantage, i.e. a insurance that would reduce or marginalize the laws against this, then I think that law enforcement would be reluctant to pursue for the counties, because they would know that they have representation as they get pulled over. That would increase the appeal of this area for sure, and that would also probably increase the amount of people that declare taxes too, because they would be in support of a proactive method, and it would also benefit the residents and the business people, because you would have a place that feels like they're abiding and they're empowered. They're empowered by those of you who are here, and so I think that might be a good method, or some version of that possibly. I think it wouldn't require any analysis or anything. I've got some creative ideas, and if you buy me a Burger King meal, I'll sit down and talk with you. But I didn't mean any disrespect whatsoever to anybody when I addressed the council here. When I asked about Robert's Rules of Order, it really is a valuable thing for our government to work properly. And so I just wanted to be sure that I could address separate items as they come along, because I wish to be a part of the process here. And I mean no one any disrespect, but I would like to insert some ideas that I've seen have worked elsewhere. And ultimately, I don't have very much longer to live, and so my legacy, I hope, is to create a better world. And I'm grateful for for your time and every moment that I get. So I'm down to 24, but I just wanted to introduce myself and to the community and thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. Any of the members of the public like to comment on this matter? Seeing none, if there's no further comments from council members, I'd like to entertain a motion to waive the first reading. Okay, motion by Hudson, second by McKinsey. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion is approved with the vote of 5-0.
Ordinance number 1412, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Marysville, California, amending section 18.67.030 of chapter 18.67 of the Marysville Municipal Code, requiring a development agreement prior to the establishment of any commercial cannabis activity that is not subject to the provisions set forth in chapter 5.12 cannabis business tax.
Thank you. Would I like to entertain a motion to introduce ordinance number 1412 for second reading?
So moved.
Motion. Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved with the vote of 5-0. Thank you. Let's move to item 8G. 8G is to approve waiving all city fees for the 2019 Bacchae Festival. This recommendation is to approve waiving all fees for the 2019 Bacchae Festival. This memo comes from our city manager, Ms. Brown. Ma'am?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council and members of the public. The item that is before you this evening is a staff recommendation approving waiving all city fees for the 2019 Bacchae Festival. We received an application from the Bacchae Committee on January 9th. The event is on March 9th. And we went through a process of evaluating the request for fee waiver, and given the short time frame, even though the city is in the process and staff's in the process of reevaluating its fee waiver process as well as its special events application and policy, but because this is such a short time frame between the submission of the fee waiver request application and the actual event, staff is recommending that all fees be waived. I wanted to just point out to the council, as you, council, you all are aware, you received a detailed analysis, cost analysis of the Bacchae Festival, and that is, of course, based on past years, because this year the event hasn't happened yet. And I just wanted to point out that the difference in the detailed analysis that was put on the dais tonight at 5:30 and the fiscal impact analysis that's in the staff report, there's a differential of about just a little under $1,000. So it ended up, the total ended up increasing to a total of $17,702, and the total that's in the staff report was $16,000 and change, about $16,900. So when we drilled down and did the deeper analysis, each department had a little bit of a different, a little bit of an increase in the estimated cost for the fee waivers. So if you're noticing that differential, I just wanted to point that out to the council. With that, that concludes my presentation.
Questions for staff?
Mr. Mayor, are we looking to discuss this at all, or are we going to do that at a different date? The staffing cost.
Certainly that is at the pleasure of the council, but as I have stated to the council and some members of the public, we are going to have a deeper dive on the special events policy. That also, one other slight error that's from 2013, not 2014, that's written in the staff report, as well as a new special events application and all city events at a workshop on April 16th. So at the council's pleasure, you can either discuss specifically Bacchae this evening and the details that are in the cost analysis, or wait until the April 16th workshop when we'll be doing a deeper dive on all events as well as a revisiting of that policy.
I just have one question that I'd like to ask on this, and I don't want to get into a big, deep discussion. We can do this at another time. But I'm just wondering, how many of these costs are we looking at that are typical hours put in of these people on a regular shift?
Police and fire chief and the community development director will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe police and fire's hours are all overtime hours for regular employees as well as reserves, or bringing in additional reserves that we wouldn't otherwise bring in, and public works hours are all during regular business hours. And from the nods in the room, it looks like I got that correct.
Public Works, all these fees are based on their regular work week. Is that what you said?
The actual hours, which are personnel, as you can see for Public Works, they are all during the regular work week. As you may notice over to the right, there's also an administrative cost box to the right of that, and those fees are not about staff time. Those are just administrative fees for applications, hanging banners, for example. That's actually not, personnel staffing time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I will just say this, and we don't need to discuss it at this time, but if we're talking about hours that are based on regular work week hours, I find it difficult to try to implement that onto these events. And again, we can discuss that at the next, when we have.
I think that's a good point.
When we do our findings on this, our deeper findings.
And I remember going through this in 2013 and kind of having similar questions. And I think if you take a look at the policy, I think it was sent earlier this afternoon. So have a chance to take a look at it. And it was trying to deal with some of those questions about things that were above and beyond our regular staff. And I think our current policy does kind of deal with some of that. The one thing I did mention to staff is, I think it's important for us to make it public. I think this policy should be public for people to understand. And I have also asked staff to maybe look at possibilities of maybe doing a workshop. Judy Mann kind of came up with the idea that she saw at another city. And I thought it was a great idea to maybe find, a public workshop so everyone can understand the costs associated with supporting events. And what that means to the city and where those funds come from, and just kind of get a sense so everyone understands what to do, what are the timelines, what are the things that, how much time does it take, staff to kind of put together these requests or these memos to us or whatever it may be, or just give folks enough time so that we can get the information adequately. So I think making it public, I think the policy should be public or a lot easier to find. It should be pretty clear on the website is if you're interested in putting a public event, here are some steps to look for and people you should contact. So I've asked staff to maybe take a look at those opportunities as well. So, but I think you have a point.
I just want to make sure we're not taking regular hourly duties, and just because those hours particularly have events, which are our standard events throughout the year, are not laid upon the expense to the event holder.
Correct.
When it's within the daily duties.
Correct, and I think that's what the policy kind of tried to do, so please take a look at some of that and what it states. I think it did try to do that. The other thing is, though, those activities would not be completed unless that event happened, meaning that work could be, they could be filling a pothole, cutting a tree somewhere else with those hours as well, right? So, no, do you know what I mean?
Wrong analogy.
I understand.
But I think your point,
but I think we need to look at that.
But I think we need to have that discussion
I agree with
on April 16th to go over the policy.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Through the chair, just to add on to that, if I might, we're always talking about hard costs here. This is all dollars and cents. There's such a thing as soft costs, the proprietor or the person putting on the event, they do a lot of stuff that's not contributed to a dollar cost. It's contributed to a soft cost, in-kind match, like putting up barricades, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I, for one, would really support some type of a sharing process. And we're not going to discuss this tonight, as the mayor said, but just think about it. A cost sharing using soft costs, hard costs, and when you apply for the waiver, your application would include how much money, whether it be in kind or hard money, you're going to put with that, and then the city has to turn right around and match that in kind or dollar for dollar. That's just a thought. I want you to think through that. And then it becomes a partnership, and it becomes sharing back and forth. I don't think anybody, Mayor, wants to put all this load on any one particular activity. But there are activities like the military stand down. I don't think anybody in this room here wants to take that away from the veterans. I don't think, and I'm just being honest, I don't think anybody wants to take the Veterans Day Parade away because we can't afford to do our share in that. So there are some emotional issues too. In the Buckeye, 150 some years, nobody wants to take that away. Nobody, I don't care. And it was suggested that we're gonna move to Yuba City. Come on, folks. You're gonna move 150 some year dedicated historical event to a city that doesn't even have a temple? So we'll just leave it at that. We got a lot of work to do on this, and I think together we can do it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions? With that, I'd like to open it up for public comments. Members of the...
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, my name is Rick Lim. I am presently the Vice President of the Chinese community. I don't think I've missed one Buckeye Parade since 1947. And the Buckeye Parade's been going on for 139 years. And I think it'd be a great loss to this city not to have it. The festivals bring more than just 2 days here. The temple is open every weekend, and whenever they can catch me, they can have a tour. The financial profits from our local businesses, someone will tell you they get a lot of it. Anyway, one of the things I hate to do is to speak in public, so this is going to be very short. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you consider waiving the fees permanently? We can work out something among people here who are volunteering to try to figure out some way to get it paid for. So anyway, I'll leave you with that.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Council. John Nicoletti. This is my 47th Buckeye, so I'm new.
You and Rick hang out?
Yeah. You know, Candace said to me that there was a discussion about the city needing $17,000 from the parade. I told her, you completely misunderstood. I think what Marty was saying was, we want to give you $17,000 to help with the parade. Because when you take something that is Buckeye, I mean, it's sacred to each of us in this room. And we learned a long time ago that the value of Marysville is so unique and so different than the surrounding communities. That's what makes us a hub city. Last week, we were able to take the president for the new Hard Rock Hotel through Chinatown. And he was really overwhelmed at the fact that we actually had a school that was restored, that was a condemned building, a museum that was probably on the condemned list that has been completely revamped and continuously upgraded, a serenity garden, and of course a temple. And at that temple, we had to wait because a bus full of folks of Asian descent came as parishioners and practiced their religion. And this continues every single weekend. One of the members of the Friends of the Buckeye Committee pointed out that he was kind of shocked because he is in downtown Marysville and he is not used to seeing buses parading through during the coming of spring. But that later that bus was at a restaurant in Marysville, and it seemed to see a correlation that it was immediate and long-lasting. So it's not a parade, it's a period. You know, this is the coming of spring, and if you've been to the temple, you know at the entrance there is a mural at that sits above the doorways, those murals were identified as one of the 11 most endangered treasures for the United States. Based on that alone, we received a ton of money to restore that temple. Local service clubs restored the roof, and today the Kiwanis Club, which there's 8 of us in this room tonight, volunteer every year with all of our key club members to set up those barricades, to do this thing, and then we go and spend $50,000 more each year on youth programs in our community. We're all in. And I think that when you think about the treasures that are in our community, today it's found in the descendants of our Asian American community members that have taken Chinatown to a new level. I would just get real excited about the opportunity to do more of what they're doing today and get right behind them.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Candace Young-Frescus. I'm the current chair of the Marysville Buckeye Parade. And I'm not here to discuss numbers or costs or anything, but I just want to give you my feelings and my thoughts of what has been going through my mind last week. So the Marysville Buckeye Parade to me isn't just a festival. It's not just a parade. It's a cultural event, not just my cultural event, but it's history, it's traditions. And this parade and this event is just as old as our city, just a mere 29 years younger than our city. So at 139 years this year, it's hard to think that this wouldn't be in your lives, or my children's lives. Myself, as a current community member, many countless volunteers that helped make this event happen, and those before me and those before them, it's home. It's an event that equates to home. This parade has survived the Spanish-American War, 2 world wars, the Depression, and countless other items that we're still standing and we're still here. Marysville is my hometown. I appreciate the opportunity to have Buckeye and the various other events that we've had as part of my childhood. I've had many opportunities to stay away from here after college, but I chose to move home and raise my own family here, and I look forward for the opportunity for them to participate in those same childhood events I had. So I hope that we can withstand time and come to an agreement later with that opportunity. And of course, I just want to thank the countless supporters of volunteers and community members who have been able to help continue and carry on the event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council, and concerned citizens. My name is Judy Mann, and I live at 1117 D Street. I normally introduce myself as a community volunteer. Today, I represent the Marysville Peking Sister City Group, which I am president of. This year marks our 33rd year of that our first representatives came to be in our parade here in Marysville. The 2 cities agreed to sisterhood in '86 to exchange cultural, art, and history, to educate our ideas among each other, to work closely with the teachers and students of the 2 cities and promote the 2 nations' economic well-being. The sister city regularly interacts with the Taipei Economic Culture Office in San Francisco, and as a result, the relationship with the Director General comes to our Buckeye Festival each year as the VIP in the parade. And in turn, a city official from Marysville and myself attends the 10/10 celebration in the Bay Area. Recently, I received several letters of concern from various Chinese associations that we, the Sister City Group, associate with. One, the Taipei Economic Culture Office. I'm not going to read the letters to you. Each of you received a copy of all the letters, but I just want to highlight some of the points. From the Director General of the Taipei office, he thanks all the members of the City Council for your continued support. with this Bacchae parade here in Marysville. He expresses that it's a rebound civic participation and also a symbol of culture preservation and promotion. He is grateful and honored that he has had the opportunity to come here each year. He hopes that the Bacchae Parade will continue and that the City of Marysville will continue to support it. Another letter I received was from a teacher at the William Land School. He states, "I'm willing to tell you how important the Bacchae Parade and Festival is to my kids. They come here, they speak Mandarin, and we teach them the Chinese culture. Bacchae Temple is the only historic site near Sacramento, and as an educator, I feel extremely grateful that the Chinese community and the Peking Sister of Marysville are willing to host trips and educate our students. They provide free tours to the kids, and the kids learn Mandarin, and that's how they learned about their culture." So, I'm probably out of time almost here, but I have several letters like this
Judy,
that were presented.
we're going to mention the letters in record, so they're in record that we did receive them and we read them. So I want to let you know that we did receive them, and we'll actually call them out that they were in record in support of this action.
Okay, so finally, if the fees are to be implemented to this long traditional event, I worry about the future community events that the Kiwanis puts on, the fishing derby, other groups put on other events here in our historic Marysville. So it worries me, and I just hope the city understands and thinks about this decision in the future.
Thank you, Judy. And you mentioned, I do want to take a look at those documents from a meeting in New Jersey, you know, that workshop you attended. You mentioned you might have some
I have it
documentation.
with me, in fact.
Thank you.
Okay.
My name's Don Schrader. I'm relatively new to the Bacchae Festival. I've only been here since 1955. I've got a little background in government, and I was amazed, having chaired the Bacchae Festival, the parade in 1986. I was somewhat astounded that we held the parade while right across the river people were flooded out, but it went on. It's easy for a bean counter to sit down and calculate costs and not calculate the effect of those costs. If you charge the Bacchae Festival $17,000 or $7,000 or probably $1,700, you will probably not see a 140th Bacchae Festival. The same is true of the Veterans Day Parade, the Christmas Parade, and there are cultural, I understand it costs the city money, but have you calculated what the city makes off these events? How many people come to town for the Bacchae Festival? How important that is in the letters that she just read to you. You've got to take all of this into effect. You cannot just count beans and say this is what it's going to cost and this is what it's going to cost you to have it, because you won't have any more cultural events. And Marysville has one unique characteristic for its size. It's the only city in California that I'm aware of that you cannot buy a pair of shoes. And now you want to eliminate all the cultural events too? This is the way to go. And I understand general plans. I went through two of them as a county supervisor. And one of the gentlemen mentioned that it's a lot of paperwork, and it is. A lot of that paperwork never gets read again. But this is real. I mean, you have an opportunity. Don't blow it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
To the chair, real quick. I see that serving 8 years with Mr. Schrader on the Board of Supervisors, he hasn't lost his eloquence in his public speaking. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Again, my name is Dale Whitmore. I live here in Marysville. I first became aware of this situation when I was attending a meeting of I think it's the Friends of the Bacchae, in which the very talented Billy Single was chairing here last week. And the main topic of the meeting was, are we going to disband? We don't have enough interest in this group. We need to get more people involved. And if the city decides that the volunteers that are making this city so good, making so many things happen, are not valuable enough to waive these fees and stop talking about them, you're going to lose a lot. And I've got the fishing derby coming up here very soon. I can hardly wait to hear what somebody wants to do about that.
How many
So,
fish will let me catch?
I mean, we put it, the voters voted for a 1-cent sales tax, bringing in, I believe, nearly $2 million a year. Supposedly, this cannabis business is going to bring in a bunch of money. And now all of a sudden, we're talking about sort of taxing all the events that are going on. It looks like the city is just money hungry and can't seem to manage what they've got. It doesn't look good for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chris Pettigo, 103.5 C Street. I can't say any much more than they did, but I would challenge the members of the city council and the city staff, honestly. If you would look in your municipal code under special events, it clearly defines this. And once again, and I know people get tired of hearing me talk about the antiquated municipal code, but it just seems to me when you do these kind of things and you don't bother to even look in the municipal code to see what it says about special events. It's so antiquated, it says recreation director, not city manager, the recreation director. And it blows me away that no one besides probably me has picked up that book, besides maybe Councilman Simmons, because I probably told him. But let me tell you, when you open these books that you may call antiquated, and I agree some of it is antiquated, you need to understand the city council has the final say on events, not the city staff. A report comes from them. It was supposed to go to the recreation director, but I don't think anybody knew that because they didn't read it. But let me tell you, these kind of events and the way that the permits are done is clearly defined under the guise and powers, final approval of city council, and I think you should start exercising that authority. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments, sir? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, my name is Jonathan Lim. I am currently the president of the Marysville Chinese community. Many of you know my family. I am a Lim. My grandfather and my grandmother was very involved with the community. My family goes back quite a ways. My great-great-grandfather came here, about when the city started. The Buckeye Parade has been going on. This will be the 139th year. Each and every year, you have faced this situation of whether you absorb the cost or not. Okay? Your fiscal calendar starts, or it's voted on in June, I believe. So probably it was maybe mentioned then, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Not involved with that. My question to you is, and obviously I'm not going to get an answer, but if one of you were hit with a $17,000 bill 1 month before you knew, what would you do? How would you feel? Maybe this is piss poor timing. It probably was. You know, this maybe should have been presented to us as, well, possibly next year these fees will come up. What really, really, really angers me is the fact that we're even having this discussion. Okay? There's so many signs around here. Historic Marysville. What's more historic than the Chinese community? What's more historic here than the Buckeye Temple? What's more historic here than a parade that's been going on in the state of California for 139 years? What other parade has been going on that long? I've done a little bit of research, just a little bit. And from my understanding, it is the longest running parade this side of the Mississippi. Do you want to lose that? Do you guys want that legacy? You know, it was heard earlier that we come back. I'm fourth generation. I moved away here. I escaped for 20 frickin' years, but I still came back for the festival. It was a yearly event. It was a cultural event. It was a part of our heritage. And it's been ingrained in this area for a very, very, very long time. So, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, please, do not pass it this year. Waive the fees as is recommended. And in April 16th, I think it was said, when you do have that workshop, I do advise you, open it up. You might want to talk to us, because I know this doesn't only affect the Buckeye Parade. A fishing derby, I mean, how much is he going to get hit for a month before his event? Excuse me? Come on. So please, take that into consideration. And I ask you, if you do open it up to the public, let me know. I would love to be in on it. I understand it takes money to run things. I honestly do. But come on, $17,000. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
It took me a minute to decide. My name is Shannon Carroll. I have not been here in a while. Congratulations to you and to you and to the residents of Marysville. You got 2 fabulous new council members. Regarding these events, I'm not going to speak just about Buckeye. I'm looking forward to your meeting next month, and I'm encouraging you, the council, to think long and hard. This created quite a mess in your community. People are very upset, as they should be. These events are part of the fabric of your community. This council, I appreciate, is not the ones that released the information, and it's my understanding that it was quite a surprise to you as it was us. When Candace called me, I said, "You've got to be kidding me." No, she wasn't. So I would say, please think long and hard about the ones that are long-going events. The Buckeye Parade. People are a little bit confused. They keep bringing up Marysville Peach Festival and the Christmas Parade. Those two are city events. I'm talking about the events that are put on by volunteers, volunteer groups, nonprofits. They bring people to your community. They are your tourism. They expose you to your neighbors, both close and far. People come from all over to attend these events that would not be coming to Marysville on a Sunday drive. Make no mistake about it. That's why they're here. That's why they continue to come back. So do not turn your back on these events. Do not turn your back on these people. Partner with them. Come alongside them. Does it cost you some money? Absolutely. Does it bring you some money? You betcha. Does it bring you exposure? Even more so. What is the value on that? So next month at your meeting, please, as a council, take the time and think about it. It's important for your community going forward. When was the last time you had this many people show up? Cannabis? So really and truly, I encourage you and I implore you, it's important. And I have actually some firsthand knowledge of these events. I'm kind of fond of them. I'd like to see them keep going. So please, take the time, search your souls. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other members of the public like to comment on this? Seeing none, let's move forward. Any comments from the council members?
I have one comment. When everybody's preaching how long they've been with Buckeye, I was one of the first person to do the VP cars. If you remember back in the 60s when we had the VP cars from all the dealerships, and all the VPs would ride in the car. We had one assemblyman that the car left, and he was still standing at Silver Dollar Restaurant. But I think every one of us have been here very long, whether we come here from the Air Force or we were, like some of them went to high school here, whatever the case may be. I think I can only speak for me, but I have a feeling about Marysville. Folks, I could have went any place in the world to retire. And where did I pick? The city of Marysville, California. And I've never once have I regretted that. I'll be damned, if I can use that expression, that I'm going to sacrifice any of this history that this city's had by voting opposing any type of recreation or any type of celebration the city has. I make that commitment to you. I work for you, and that's my commitment.
Any other comments before we take a vote? Well, I think bottom line, it's funny when you do TV interviews and the newscaster puts a microphone and then that I said some really important things and they didn't cover those. They did cover the part that I said that Buckeye is Marysville, and I truly believe that, and I believe that The city has been partnered with the Buckeye festivities for 138 years. We'll continue being partners for another 138 years. We'll continue being side by side on the Buckeye Festival, and I'm looking forward to continuing it and making it the best festival in California, and we want to invite as many. I'm very proud of the Buckeye Festival when I'm about with different cities and other counties and regional gatherings, and I always tell folks, come and visit us. It's a great event. It's the thing you'll never see anywhere else. It's unique, and you'll really enjoy coming to the Buckeye Festival. So, and I think all of us do that, and we're very proud of the Buckeye Festival. With that, I'd like to entertain a motion to take staff recommendations to approve waiving all city fees.
Motion.
Second. Motion by Mr. Baracavoli, second by Mr. Hudson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Simmons?
Aye.
Mr. Baracavoli?
Aye.
Ms. McKenzie? Aye. Mr. Hudson?
Aye.
Mr. Samayoa?
Aye. Motion to approve waiving all the fees is approved with a vote of 5-0. Thank you, everyone. Now we're going to move to item 10A. 10A is resolution regarding watering schedule for all city parks and facilities. The recommendations to approve Resolution 2019-07 of the City Council of the City of Marysville to continue the current park watering schedule for all city parks and facilities for the remainder of the fiscal 2018-19. And we'll wait a couple of seconds to allow folks to leave if they want to.
You're looking at me like I...
I'm not saying it.
Yeah, at least they...
I don't think they took that into consideration.
One year we had somebody who brought
Almost a number.
goose, a live goose, and sat it in. They painted? No, it was because to make a point about pulling the, yes, brought it right down the center of the aisle, right next to the podium, and we could all see. Another year, he brought.
We're going to move forward and move to item 10A. Again, item 10A is resolution number 2019-07 to continue current park watering schedule for all city parks and public facilities for the remainder of the fiscal year 18-19. This recommendation comes from our Community Development and Services Director, Mr. Jim Bermudez, sir.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members. So I bring to you today, as you preface there, the current park watering schedule for city parks and public facilities for the remainder of this particular fiscal year. What the staff recommendation is calling out at this action by council is to progress with the current watering for the current fiscal year for 2018-19 fiscal year. And what I'd like to do is just get a little bit more detailed. This particular topic has always been, I think, a conversation piece between staff and council and prior past councils just about expanding the particular watering schedule for city parks facilities. And currently under the current watering schedule, the city allocated funding to do full watering of city parks and facilities through the month of April, all the way through the end of September or October 1st. And that's been, I think, for the last couple of years that I've been here, a year and a half, and it's been kind of following this particular schedule. As I mentioned, there's been, questions related to expanding or increasing the scheduling, and then in case-by-case scenarios, staff has actually extended based on council feedback and the condition of the various turf, extended it more seasonal and expanded the watering to preserve the health vitality of our parks. So we have done it, expanded it on a case-by-case basis. And so within the report, And I provided a table that provides a calendar year snapshot of 2018. And when you look at the totals for that calendar year 2018, it roughly comes out to $135,434 of total cost. That is for water and that is for electrical. And then if you break down April to October, the total is $112,329 of what the city expends during that time frame of watering. So in evaluating what would actually be a cost to increase the watering schedule for the month of March, as has been requested, and as well as add on for the full month of October, staff collected data provided by our finance department and essentially developed a calendar year January to December snapshot of what the true billing has been for that calendar year of 2018, and I provided that particular data in there. Now, in determining what exactly is the true cost, or come to a decision, a conservative decision of what would be the cost to add March and October to that particular, to the watering schedule. What I had to do is take at the high points of when we're watering, and which in my analysis, it did run from May to September, and it did average it out to determine what would be an average cost. And as I know in the cost, it's roughly about $8,600 for electrical service and $8,547 for water. So that's taking the high points. And then if we had to move forward with a March and October watering, that particular total of $17,244 by adding those particular costs up would be applied to the month of March and October. This is conservatively. There, as I mentioned in the staff report, there are seasonal adjustments. There's, in this case, robust February, which I think, we would all conclude turning on the sprinklers at this point in March is probably, literally pouring money down the drain, literally. We just had a robust February weather, so things are about to sprout come March. So with that said, what I then tried to demonstrate in the analysis is, well, what would be that cost when you factor in March and October current data that's within the table provided by finance, and what I reflect within the staff report is an additional $12,386 for March and $10,298 for October. So with that, in adding that up, it would increase the budget for water by $22,684. Again, this is utilizing the optimum period, as I referenced, between May and September. There are variables. I understand that side of water conditions, weather, climate, etc. So with that said, we have a figure of $22,684, and that would be a split the baby cost if you were to add it to March and April. Actually, that would be the total cost, with $12,000 allocated for March and $10,000 allocated for October. So with that, staff is at this point recommending that we see an added cost, and that if it is the desire of the council to address additional watering, that we entertain an exercise through our budget review process and bring forward some analysis and look at various ways where we may look at funding from other funding sources within our general fund budget and pull that together and potentially increase it, but doing it via the dialogue through our budget process. So at this point, what we're recommending for right now would be to stick to the current schedule until the fiscal budget concludes, and then have that dialogue during the budget meetings with the city council, and then decide where we want to move forward with adding additional months of watering. So that concludes my presentation. I'm open for any questions at this time.
Thank you. Any questions?
Through the
Yes,
chair.
sir.
Jim, you said you did a case-by-case basis prior to giving us our numbers, which, thank you for them. What was the criteria for those case-by-case bases that you increased the watering in the past?
Case by case would have been weather. We had turf drying out a longer extended summer season where we needed to water and we weren't getting our typical October or November type of rain that kind of comes in, so we had to leave the sprinklers on. And then the other case by case is just council requests to keep them on longer, and morely not just to keep them on and turn them on, but because of those factors related to turf condition and so forth.
So it was a one-time only type situation, you evaluated with your staff and kind of go from there?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, maybe I use this excuse a lot, being the newbie on the block. How did this even come about that we are considering March and November?
September.
It came about through...
November, correct?
Okay. You want me to go ahead?
Is that correct? He made a correction here. It's March and November that you're talking about.
Correct. Thank you for the clarification there, Mr. Simmons, correct. Yes, it came about via requests by Tree Foundation as well as requests by past council members to explore, look at data that would demonstrate that we could have the budget to actually increase watering on these particular months.
I got you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Comment. You mentioned that this came about for trees as well as watering of the trees. Is that, did I hear that correctly?
Trees, turf.
Okay.
Yes.
If there is not a plan put forward that's been approved by the superintendent or the supervisor of the public works under the old ordinance, that plan has been accepted and allows these trees to be planted, if that's disapproved, then there's no reason to raise this water. But if that plan has been approved, then there is a reason for raising the water from those new trees. So I guess my question leads to this. Has there been a plan submitted by the appellant, the person requesting these watering trees? Has that been approved? Has the tree planting been approved?
No, but what we have had through my tenure is a past condition where there have been prior tree plantings where saplings have basically died, and the request has come in is that as part of increasing the watering schedule, the thought was let's add a month in the beginning and a month at the end to hopefully see the survival rate of those saplings actually work
I had a
out.
long meeting this morning with the city manager and you, and we went over this forward and backwards, ups and downs, and you got up and walked around, and I sat down. No, just kidding. It was Mr. Simmons for a while, and then it became Bill, and back to Mr. Simmons. So I think it's interesting to note that this stimulates around a tree planting. And my question is, has there been, in accordance with the ordinance, has there been a plan submitted to you to approve, then there's no need for the water increase? Is that?
There has not been a plan submitted.
But I will say this, in conversation with the gentleman that's asking for this, he only wants $4,000 in a month of March to water the trees. So I think we need to get some clarification on this. What is really going on? How many trees? Has there been a plan submitted? Are you going to submit a plan? Are we going to approve this contingent upon you submitting a plan and being approved? Or are we not going to honor it at all?
Who's putting a plan together?
Well, I'll tell you who it is, Mr. Whitmore.
Okay.
And not saying anything out of confidence, but he's the one that wants to plant the trees.
So I think that's where, and let's try to keep this separate. I think.
Yes.
I think if there's a plan that has to go through staff and they have to analyze it, and then we'll go through us if we want to start planting trees or replacing dying trees or have some type of master plan for all our trees throughout the city. I mean, there's folks that have older trees that want to remove because, you know, it's getting in the way of their sidewalk or, aside from that, I think that's separate from this. I think if there's a need for water, I think in my mind, we leave it up to staff to kind of analyze the situation. But I do have a specific question.
Well, Mayor, I wasn't finished. I need
Okay.
to qualify. I'm not saying there's a need for water. I'm saying the need for this request is predicated on planting new trees. And there's no need to have the water if the plan for planting the trees hasn't been approved.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. So it's a,
So if this is only a tree issue and not a turf issue?
No.
No. So, I mean, that could be a turf issue in my mind, and I'll tell you, and I'll go,
I don't know.
I think staff have a pretty good, I mean, they go on a weekly basis to kind of maintain our parks. They've done a tremendous job in keeping them pretty good in the last couple of years, in my mind. I know the Little League folks really enjoy using the parks, you know. Sometimes the grass maybe gets a little taller, but at the end of the day, on average, I think things are pretty good in our parks. And they look pretty good. But my question is, I mean, many of you met with Cal Water this last week as they're changing their new manager. One of the things that was important for me to note is that they have some type of program to try to look at new, more efficient sprinkling systems. Are you looking at maybe partnering up with Cal Water to look at their program that they have to kind of update some of our sprinkling systems, our heads or whatever it may be, or specific dedicated water to areas?
We've had dialogue with Cal Water regarding that program, and one of the challenges that we encounter is, given the vintage of our system, we're finding that given the new type of sprinkler heads and those type of new facilities, it's a challenge with the amount of pressure that we're getting in our current lines. And so what we have done as staff, talked about with this new parks program through the state and their grant, I think it's Prop 64 funding, is to methodically start going after those particular funding for park modernization. And so in doing so, that will allow us to upgrade our infrastructure with the hope that when we do that, we plot out and plan for tree plantings so that we can do spot watering and integrate that into the overall bigger picture of the park and where we want to head with watering. Furthermore, I would add that with the grant funding, we definitely can still tier off of what Cal Water offers as a program. So what we as staff have been waiting for, which I think the grant will open, I believe, in June, attending a meeting, I think, next week. It will open up, and so when we put for that grant application, we will look at construction design, we'll get some true costs, so we know what we need to go after as far as funding, but then we can offset that with the program of Cal Water.
Right. Thank you for that. And I think that also ties to our upcoming Parks and Open Space presentation. Will come up to talk about the parks and maybe future use of the park. Not necessarily all turf, that they might be used for something else, and they might be designed differently, so maybe we have a different a need for water at the end of the day.
Can I opine on that real quick?
Yeah.
What I would say, just on reading the chapters and looking at the draft document, that is a very good point, which is, I think the world and where we're going with parks and what we heard from the community is going to be definitely an overhaul on more active space with actual people having barbecues and having parties. So there's going to be more hardscape, built into parks when we modernize, so people have the ability to rent them out or use them. So I see in the future that the turf area will start to decrease, so we won't need the sizes of infrastructure that we currently need today.
Yeah, and I think, even that will still need for shade, and natural shade is probably the best shade to have, and so, having trees around in the landscape, but all that's, I imagine, part of the landscaping plan.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'm thinking this is a little bit of a waste of time at this point to go too much further on this. March, we're not going to have to worry about water in March, I got a feeling. If this is predicated on new trees, which are not even into a plan yet of any type, and I don't think we need to worry about November either. We're kind of getting the cart ahead of the horse with the way we're talking about this. I would like to say that with some of the things that I've seen, and I'm going to make this specific to music in the park, which I hope my fee schedule doesn't change. I'm a little concerned about.
Of course.
I'll be here for a waiver fee, I can tell you right
You have
now.
to abstain from voting, buddy.
I know. But with there, you know, even throughout the heavy part of the summer, it hasn't been the water, it's been that a lot of the sprinkler heads need adjusting or directing or replaced, which I don't know if any of the other parks you've looked at don't have that same problem. I'm assuming they do.
They do.
I do. But I just think if we're talking about 1 year, 1 season, and we're looking at trying to increase $22,000 of expense, when you're probably not going to even be able to walk in the parks next month, they're going to be so wet. I think we ought to make a quick decision on this and move on.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, sir. Now I'd like to open it up for comments from the public.
Hello, my name is Dale Whitmore, and with all due respect to Jim, he did a great job of analyzing the whole thing, but as far as I'm concerned, it's just useless and disgusting. As far as bringing up the whole thing, I again asked to plant some trees, 10 to 20 trees, around the edges of the parks to replace the trees that have died or been cut down in the past several years. And it's been a difficult battle trying to keep those things going, but the trees that are out there are because the tree volunteers have been busy getting those things in the ground, going out there with the hose, standing there watering the things whenever things got dry. I mean, we had to get by our years of a quarter inch of, 15 minutes of water a day during the hottest day, during the summer, which only wet down the top eighth of an inch of dirt, which dried out by the afternoon. But we managed to keep the trees growing anyway. And I see this as simply an end run to say, hey, we don't want you planting any more trees. We don't need your help. This is another insult to the volunteers in Marysville. And I find it just damn disgusting. I had put this letter, all we asked for was $400 to buy the trees and guarantee that if it didn't rain in March, that somebody turned their sprinklers on in those parks where the new trees were planted. Now, I don't believe, the way it looks right now, I damn well believe it won't cost a dime to water anything the way the rains keep coming. But if you watered 4 or 5 parks for a couple of weeks in March, I doubt you'd be costing more than a couple $1,000s. So, the whole thing here was about $22,000 for March and November. Well, November is the next fiscal year. It has nothing to do with now. You can deal with that at your budget meeting here on the 4th of March. All we wanted was a little water in the month of March, buy a few trees, replace the ones that have died, and we got all kinds of tree problems. We have people going around breaking them, kicking them over, getting their pocket knives out and girdling them. And we don't want to miss another year. The best time to plant these is right now. You got to get them in the ground so the roots can get settled a little bit before it starts to get hot. So I think this stupid thing ought to be rejected, and I would like to see the item that we requested be on next month's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Through the chair, what are you actually at? I need to know what
Let's
he's
not go back
asking,
and forth.
man.
Have a discussion with him afterwards.
Well, we're gonna vote on it.
I think he's saying that he wants us permission to plant trees. That item's not on the table right now.
No, I'm asking, Mr. Mayor, what is he asking this council to approve? $400, $4,000? What?
He wants us to allow his group to plant 400 trees.
No, he's asking for water.
That's not what this says.
That's not what this says, but I want to know what he says. But anyway, do what you want to do, Mayor, you're the chair.
Let's just hear from the public, and then we can have a discussion, sir.
Hello, my name is Beverly Hayes. I live at the corner of Bolton and Rideout in Marysville, across from a city park. I was born across from a city park in Marysville. This is the third house my husband and I have lived in city parks, and I'm going to take a minute to tell you the importance of parks in a city. Marysville is fortunate, Mayor and Ms. Brown and City Council, I'm sorry I didn't greet you appropriately, and chiefs. Parks in Marysville are some of the oldest in the state. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the importance of parks. They enhance property value. They provide many benefits for homeowners. It encourages workers. It encourages retirees to live in a city where they have parks. It's important to the quality of life in the community. And I believe the request is for water in March if there is no rain. And Mr. Buttacavoli graciously pointed out that that probably would not be a problem. My husband and I and many people in this audience have been involved over the last 15 years of planting trees in city parks, volunteering our time. 1 month, several years ago, one summer, my husband and I had a $300 water bill because we were taking our hose across the street to water trees that had been planted. Many people go the extra mile volunteering to do that. Trees in a park supply, one large tree in a park can supply a day's worth of oxygen for 4 people. It helps clean the air, it helps get rid of dust, it helps with the effect of global warming in a park. It's a place for children to play, families together. There are events that people do in the park. We have many people that live in apartments. Having a city park to go to is a great way for people to get together. It helps restore carbon in the area. It absorbs pollutants in the air. And research shows that within minutes of being surrounded by trees in a green space, the blood pressure of people drops, heart rate slows, stress level goes down, and it also encourages local pride. When you go to a community and you look at that community, you look at how they value their parks. Thank you for listening. I very much recommend that you go ahead and allow the park volunteers, of which I say there are many in this audience right now, to plant their trees, maintain our parks, and value. And as a sidebar, Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering what happened to the mission statement for the City of Marysville that used to be on this wall. We have a perfect space for it to go back here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Chris Patagono, 3.5 C Street. I was one of those tree volunteers. I don't know how many of you have been to Veterans Park, but honest to goodness, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, probably never even knew that we planted trees in those parks. I lived right across the street. I live on 8th Street, 611. And let me tell you, when you go out there in the blazing heat until it's dark and get ate up by mosquitoes to save those trees by dragging 3 hoses put together, then you can tell me that I'm not a volunteer, and then you can tell me that I didn't put everything I had into those trees. My niece, one of my nieces, lives right next door to one of those parks and plays under those trees. There's a couple trees there that have barely hung on because the city staff hasn't figured out, who, by the way, is supposed to give a tree report every year. That's in the municipal code. Every year. Hasn't figured out the difference between watering trees and watering turf. We were at Miners Park, and they cleaned up the sprinkler head. The city staff and the volunteers from the church cleaned those sprinkler heads. We had crop circles, is what I called them, because they were so out of adjustment. They were so misaligned. It's amazing. The moment they went out and cleaned up those sprinkler heads and readjusted them, they worked great. We used less water at some of the other parks because we got new sprinklers. And if we hadn't drug our feet and not put in the park pumps, which like they should have done, Councilman Simmons provided all the data, yet we'll waste it on a consultant. I swore I'd never come back and be angry, but I don't know that I'm more angry tonight to listen to people say, don't do anything, don't do anything, don't do anything. We don't want you to plant trees. And I'm the first to tell you, you need to put in drip lines to support those trees so it saves money. You can spend, you can talk about all the $22,000 you want. We've had this battle 5 times in 5 different budget cycles here, but nobody wanted to do it. And they all laughed when we said, by the way, you maybe want to think about taking out those pumps. We put a pump back into Veterans Park with capital improvement money that nobody wanted to spend, and we saved money. And I give credit where credit's due. Mayor Samioa helped us and got some of that money from Cal Water for the bark. It went together as a project. Credit where credit's due. But let me tell you, you need to really think about cutting the water off just because the time of the calendar says to is absolutely ludicrous. And I know you've tried to do some watering, but I'll tell you this, none of you got the phone call when you've cut the water off when they're cleaning the Veterans Memorial because you cut the water off on those days. So I would urge you to vote no on this.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments?
I'm going to make it quick. I think what I'm hearing tonight is we need to get trees in now so we can save on water, because now's the time you put the trees in. When you garden, you kind of know you want to get them in and make use of the water we're getting right now. And sounds like this isn't really important, but since we're bringing it up for discussion, it seems like the figures are going to change anyways. We're putting wells in some of the parks. It's going to be changing, so we can think about that for when it's going to be coming up on budget. We got solar panels. I don't know if that's going to affect our electrical costs and lower those, hopefully, but maybe that doesn't pertain to the parks and the pumps. Looking at drought-tolerant plants, one of my questions to bring up for discussion for later is soccer fields. I'm seeing a lot of water, just, I guess we use irrigation system to water the soccer fields, and are we taking that burden on? You don't have to answer tonight, but for later, are we paying for that, or is the soccer participants maybe helping out with that? Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good question. I don't know. I know that we have an agreement with the soccer league, and I know we were reviewing the agreement with the soccer league folks. I don't know where we're at with that.
They're on their own well. They have a well. They're not Cal Water.
But who's paying the electrical?
They are.
The electrical bill?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. You got the answer. Thank you. Yes. Oh, I just want to, is there any more comments from the public on this matter? Okay, none. So I'm sorry, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Well, I just want to say, I've always felt like we need to water a little longer at the end of in October, probably, but I do think we can hold off on this until budget time, since we are having a lot of rain. And I just want to say I'm grateful for the volunteers that we have and, the trees that you've planted and all of that. And I want to see that continue in a partnership with the community development department. So I think as the city's responsible for the outcome of those trees, and really, like, in the long run, the city's responsible for that. So I think we need to be able to make sure that trees are planted in a good location. The species of trees is going to be a hardy, drought-tolerant tree. So I think there needs to be a cooperation that needs to be planned out that probably we're not ready to do at the moment, but I would like to see that partnership happen. And I think that with the Parks Master Plan
that's going to be proposed to us next month or so, very soon. And I think we need to look at that, see what the plan looks like. I would hate to see trees being planted that are going to be pulled up because of redeveloping the parks in any ways, and those trees not surviving. So I think it's great. I support planting trees and having volunteers donate those trees and plant those trees, but I support it in the context of working with our staff to figure out the right timing, the right place, and all those kind of details. So I want to say thank you, and that I'm grateful for the work that you've done and that you want to do, but I want to see it happen according to the plan that we're all going to have together. And as far as the watering goes, I think we should just wait to budget this out when we're planning our budget. Like
Thank you.
The
Mr. Mayor.
recommendation states.
Yes, sir.
I don't want anybody to think that we're not appreciative of your volunteer work. What my concern is we're talking about trees that need to be watered, that I believe Mr. Whitmore just said he needs $400 from the city to buy the trees. Am I correct? So we don't have the trees yet that we're talking about, but it hasn't even been brought to us yet. And then the biggest problem that I see is the strategic location of where these trees go, because with our planning study of our park study, we're looking at possible areas for tennis courts, basketball courts, softball, baseball fields. I don't know how we could go out and be putting in trees until we know what that layout's going to be. So I think it's a little premature in two ways. One, we don't know the strategic location of them, and two, it hasn't even been brought to us about buying the trees. So I don't know how long that would even take to be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on. Is there any other comments from the public? From the council?
Yes, I'd like to
Yes.
follow up on what I was saying. These trees, these $400 for these trees, my understanding is they're going to be planted around the periphery of the park, not in the middle of the park. And also that this is a two budget cycle project. Part of it's in the 18 and 19, and part of it's in 1920. We have a calendar issue here before us, but yet it goes into a fiscal program of next year. So the money not spent in this will be encumbered in the next year's budget. That's just the way we do business. So I guess what I want to know is, how much money does Mr. Whitmore want us to approve contingent upon the fact it doesn't rain? How much money? $2,000, $3,000, $4,000? How much money for that 1 month in March? Not October, November, December. For 1 month in March.
How much water?
Please, can you come back to the podium?
Sure.
Well, I want to know, how much you asking for? If it's $300, what is it?
Well, first of all, as far as Mr. Buttacavoli's, that's a very sensitive issue. And we're just planting trees around the edges of the parks and replacing those trees that have died. And we generally plant them within 10 or 15 feet of the curb. We get them far enough away so the roots aren't going to damage the street, the sidewalk. But yet they're close enough so that they shade the cars that are going to be parking along the street. And we may also plant a few trees right around the playground equipment, which we're trying to shade that playground equipment. So much of that playground equipment is sitting in the sun all summer long, and kids can't really use it. And so, if it didn't rain a bit in March, I guess, according to this thing here, I guess we're talking about $10,000. To which I would then wonder, last spring, we added $10,000 to the water budget for the parks in order to take care of this. I thought this was all taken care of last March. And apparently, I didn't communicate, nobody understood, something happened. But on the other hand, how in the month of March, if it stays as wet as it is, if it stays cool, you don't have to put much water out there. A couple $1,000 is probably all the water you need to keep the ground wet enough until you get to the 1st of April when you turn the sprinklers on full blast again. So we just try and plus the volunteers are volunteering to go out there with those 3 garden hoses that we stretch all from one end of the park to the other and water those trees whenever things get dry. And we've been doing this for 7 years now, and we have planted hundreds of trees in the park, and we've struggled, had a lot of trees die, but we've also had a lot of success, and the trees are growing. And if we put it off another year, that's just a lost year, and one more year in which we don't have the trees getting started so that everybody can enjoy them. And we can have a plan put together, and every time we do this, I am in the director's office and working with Ken Alameda to talk about what trees, where we're going to plant them exactly, and everything is coordinated. This is not a Wild West. Dale Whitmore's running around on his horse doing whatever he wants to. That's not the way it works here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, if I could make a comment, my husband and I will donate $400 toward trees if the city will commit to watering in March. Make that commitment for $400 from Howard and Beverly Hayes for trees for the city of Marysville.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, sir.
So I can appreciate the commitment of volunteerism. I spent most of my life being a volunteer in one function or another. Don't necessarily appreciate the insinuation of never recognizing what volunteers do. But what I do like to see is a plan. And I'm not sure I'm seeing one. I'm seeing a whole lot of contingencies of different plans. There's different plans for improvements to Park and Rec. We're talking about wells in the parks. We're talking about solars. And then we're also talking about trees. And I do appreciate that volunteers want to go do all the work, but does that fit within any plan? Or just a desire to put the trees around the curbs? I don't know. If you're asking me to make a decision based upon numbers that are presented to me, these numbers I don't like. But other numbers that are being shared before this council on the dais tonight are not necessarily on a plan, but just numbers that are being spitballed out. I mean, I'd like to see a plan. That's what I'd like to see from either the volunteers and or for the volunteers who work with staff. You got to have some sort of idea of what it's going to cost and what you're looking for, thinking about the staff and people that need to go out and turn on the pumps, whatever the case is, a plan. All contingencies. Kind of come from there. Come to the table with some sort of plan. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you for that comment. Any other comments? Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So is this watering, if you planted trees this spring, it wouldn't necessarily be watering that, it would be hand watering that the trees would need, right? And not the general watering with the sprinklers?
Yeah, well, in a park, if you plant 5 or 6 trees in a park, you may just want to turn the water on. And not every park has a spigot to run a hose from. Okay. Veterans Park has a spigot. Gavin Park, Motor Park has a spigot, and we can go out and water those by hand. Mm-hmm. Some of the parks don't have any spigots. You just need to turn the sprinklers on and wet the ground in the area where the trees are at to make sure that they keep going. Every situation is different, but we have also worked to get spigots. One time, none of the parks had spigots in them. Now, probably half of them do, because we've been working on this process for 7 years now, and we know what we're doing, and we will have a plan together within a very short time, and we will get that to the director, and we will let you know what we think needs to be done, and then we'll get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, may I request
Yes.
a statement, just to clarify a little bit here, which is, we're talking about the water, and I get that. We kind of morphed into a tree discussion. But before we get a little bit too far ahead, Chapter 1116 in the city's municipal code addresses the city's ability of who can plant trees within the city. I don't know how it was done several years ago or many years ago, but it's in the municipal code, 1116, and what that essentially says is the city as city staff and the city as a director or designee within the superintendent's department has the authority to essentially plant trees within the city. It doesn't give any outlet within the ordinance for private groups, nonprofit groups, or any other type of entity to come into the city and plant trees. Now, can we make exceptions on case by case if plans are accordingly and this and that, and the superintendent determines that that is feasible, viable, that you would actually have a young tree survive? Possibly, but when you read the code, it's pretty explicitly clear that that decision comes from the city staff and superintendent.
Thank you. Any other comments? We spent, I don't know, a good half hour on one item, and we still got other items. I want to point out a couple things, and I think this is where we have to kind of come to a commitment as council and the public. Our job, I think $400 to plant trees should not take council's time. I think our time should be taken on putting together policies that detail what we want our parks to look like. And we want staff to go out there and get that done and give them the resources. If that takes community and volunteer collaboration, then let's add that to our policy. Staff should be able to spend $400 to plant more trees to replace the ones that they have as they see case to case, and give them that ability to do that, to maintain our parks beautiful and maintain them well maintained. I don't want to get into discussion about watering, but I don't have the time to do the analysis. What I want is green, useful parks that our children can use, that our seniors can use, and people have shade. We need bathrooms in our parks. We should set a policy that at the end of 20 years, we should have bathrooms. Maybe that's the policy we set, and then we give our staff the task to put together those things. I guess I just want to come back, and I think Mr. Hudson had a good point. There's no plan here. The plan should be volunteers groups should be able to work with staff and figure out a way that we can plant some trees. And we have monies dedicated to maintain our parks. But we shouldn't just be planting trees where we need volunteers from the outside, because that's not sustainable. It doesn't seem sustainable. If our system is so old and outdated, this doesn't sustain new trees. That's why we need to upgrade our new. So our policy should be that our parks are going to be green, and they be sustainable, and they should be energy efficient, and we should be able to use the best methods and be attractive. Those are the policy statements that we need to start making for our city. And we'll have an opportunity with our park and open space master plan. We spent half an hour to talk about watering trees. So that's staff's responsibility. Our direction should be, we want beautiful and attractive trees in parks. Anyway, that's my comment on that. I don't think there's any more to say, really. Go ahead.
So I'd like to say with that, if it takes watering in March to make that happen, if for some reason it's not, I think maybe we could say, okay, if we don't have a wet spring, water when the ground starts getting dry.
Yeah, and staff can do
we give
that.
that flexibility with that?
Yes.
Right now, I don't think we have it, do we?
Well, we have a budget that we gave them. We've given them a budget, and they should look at, and them as staff should be able to say, you know what, we're gonna need to spend a little bit more and maybe come back and do a budget adjustments because we have a dry season.
Yeah.
And they can come back for that.
So
but
can we do that?
Of course.
Do we have the flexibility right now to just say, okay, if it's dry in March, we can water in March, or do we have to say you can water in March?
I think they can do that determination themselves. Staff should have that.
That's what I think too, so yeah.
And they do have that ability to say, because what?
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, I asked Ms. Marinas, excuse me.
Well, can I finish? So my suggestion is, unless this already exists, do we agree? We want green parks, right? We want green parks. So if we have to water in March to keep the parks green, if we have to water in October to keep the parks green, and yes, a budget adjustment following that, but that's
I don't know if that's necessarily our policy. I mean, that's something we can agree on.
That's
But I'm saying our parks master plan is gonna give us an opportunity to put together those policies.
Right.
So I guess my point is that plan is gonna give us a vision of what our parks are gonna be, because we had a lot of community input. It wasn't just the council who said we want a softball field or a racquetball place. The community had a lot of input into it, and so the parks are gonna reflect our community's input. Again, I look forward to that meeting. I think it's gonna be set up for March 19th.
think we...
16th?
We moved it to we moved it to April 2nd. 'cause
April
we're now
2nd?
that- Yeah.
Okay.
Through the chair. real
Yes, sir.
quick. In answer to Councilmember McKenzie, I believe that was my question to Jim in the beginning. The staff does have the discretion to go case-by-case basis, should they see fit, whether it be brought to them from their staff or the public, whatever the case is, because we do want green grasses. But I still would like to see a plan, moving back to my motion, from any entity, come to the table with a solution to the problem.
Mr. Mayor?
But let me just, I guess my point being, and I'll get to you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I think part of it is staff are smart enough to be able to figure that one out and say, well, that tree doesn't make sense. The superintendent may say that tree doesn't make sense because there's no water source to maintain it. And that could be something that the staff could do on their own, right? We don't need it to come to this council. Our council should be able to say the big picture of what our park should look like. Yeah. Sir?
Just one question, one comment. I'd like to make a motion, we approve the watering schedule and get on with it.
Well, it's your motion to approve resolution 2019-07, sir?
Whatever the schedule is.
Well,
Staff recommendation.
the staff recommendation,
As is.
do you want to,
That's the motion.
that's the
I'm just trying
motion?
to make sure I understand clearly that what the motion is that we approve what staff is proposing.
Exactly. And I call for the question.
Is there a motion and second?
Yes.
Question has been called. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved with a vote of 5-0.
Beat this thing up for 4 hours.
Let's move to item B.
We weren't making any headway with this.
The question has been called. The vote was taken. The vote is to approve resolution
was just a comment.
2019-17 to continue the current park watering schedule for all city parks and public facilities for the remainder of fiscal year 2018. That's what it was on the docket. Thank you.
But are we not going to have trees planted?
That's not an action item, ma'am.
On the agenda?
It might have to do with a comment back to Jim's question, because we have a new staff, how we, the volunteers, got involved in the first place in the city. I think it's wise and important for them to...
I think that would be a good conversation.
But when are we going to talk about it? They're in the public. I mean, it would be good to let them know how it all, was because our city was broke.
Kelly, I think there's a couple places. It's not on the discussion and action calendar, but two, you are always open to, one, meet with any of us. Two, you can always meet with staff. Three, there's a community and consent calendar forum, an opportunity for you to bring up some of those contexts.
See you next week, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to item B, folks. Item 10B, ordinance amending portion of the Marysville Municipal Code entitled Penalties. Recommendation to waive the first reading and introduce ordinance number 1413, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Marysville, California, amending portions of Chapter 10.9 of the Marysville Municipal Code entitled Penalties. This comes from our Chief of Police, Mr. Sachs. Sir?
Mr. Mayor, Honorable Council, I'll try to make this short and sweet. So, before this evening is the motion to introduce ordinance 1413 for first reading and set March 5th for the second reading, consideration and adoption. As required by state law, the City of Marysville currently transfers a $12.50 surcharge fee on every parking citation to the state of California. So the proposed ordinance amendment would allow the city to add this surcharge to the parking citation, thereby passing on the state's required surcharges to the violator for that process. We had done some staff, Lieutenant Barber and I had done some analysis. You'll see the paper in front of you that looks like this. We took a handful of our most violated sections and compared them with other cities around us. As you can see, the city of Yuba City, which we're compared to quite often because people say that they, shop and stay in Yuba City and their fines are not as large as ours. They just transfer to the Uniform Bail Code, which means all of theirs are the state fee. So you'll see the big difference. A handicap citation in Marysville is $400, but yet in Yuba City it's $1,029. If you park in a red zone in Marysville, it's $50, and in Yuba City it's $162. So out of every parking citation, the state
Budget Act says that $12.50 goes of that to the state. The city's currently paying that fee for the violator at this point in time, and since the state is mandating that fee, we want to pass it along. At the very bottom of it, and highlighted in red, is the surcharge that we're proposing, and Yuba City and Grass Valley are currently looking at it, which are around us, and then also the other ones that currently have it in place, where they have passed it along, as the City of Sacramento, Chico, and the Yuba College Community Policing District. So I would be happy to answer any questions that you guys have for me.
Questions?
Yes, this is a good time to bring this up. When we did the boat dock launching fees and parking fees, we put it as administrative action rather than a vehicle code, for the simple reason we did not want to have to pay the state. The state caught on to that and changed it. Where does that money go now? Where's the money that the fines, the $200 parking fine that you, for parking in the wrong place in the park, where does that money go? How much do we get back into the boat launch fund?
I don't know of the certain percentage breakdown from every citation from the boat launch specifically, but the fines go to a specific fund for the boat launch facility that are written out of there. I can tell you right off the top of every parking citation that's written in the city, there's a 16% fee that goes to the parking management company that we're currently contracted with. And then on top of that, $12.50 goes to the state of California. So if we really break it down, on a $25 timed parking ticket, take 16%, you take the $12.50, we get about $3.95 for the guy that's out there writing that citation, which that's out-of-pocket cost for us.
Ours are $200 in the boat launch area.
I understand the boat launch area, so you take that
I know you do.
16% off the top for the state, that are for the processing, you take the $12.50 because it's mandatory from the state, and whatever's left over out of that goes into a specific fund for the boat launch itself. But the other ones go into the parking revenue. So
what my question is, are we receiving any benefit from those citations that are written in the parking area, boat launch area?
well, when people pay the violation, yes, we're seeing that in a revenue, what's ever left over from the 16%
Yeah.
and the $12.50. I think there was probably, the last time we checked, there was a little over, I think 8,000, if I'm correct,
That
in that
goes
account.
into the dedicated account on the boat launch?
I think there's a little over 8,000 in there
Find
right
that
now.
out. Thanks, Chief. I'm just curious about that.
Can we just ask Jennifer, can you confirm whether or not boat dock parking fines go into the line item that's specific to the boat dock?
They do not right now. All of our parking fines go into
What I thought.
general lines and parking tickets. We
That's
don't
what I
have
thought.
separation between what type of ticket and what line item it goes into.
So the only monies that goes into the boat dock line item that I believe you, Councilmember Simmons.
I know what goes in there.
Yeah, that you led the charge on creating that line item, is the fees for the boat dock itself,
And also the parking.
not parking
Well, it was
fees.
supposed to have gone in there. That was why it was $200, to help fund the funding of the maintenance and upkeep of the boat dock area. That's what it was for.
Okay, well, I'm just saying at this time, it doesn't look like that's where those monies are
I
going, so.
would like to say, Mayor, I'd like to direct staff to look at that and make it sure that it's supposed to go in there, that they put it in there.
So the ordinance should speak to that, I imagine. That was passed related to that fee or tickets? Okay, so we'll have staff review it and give us some clarification. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Were you done with your presentation, sir?
Yeah, I'm just happy for
Okay, any questions for our chief?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I'm curious, when this schedule was set up, it seems like if we're getting $3 out of a parking ticket, this probably shouldn't be the right amount of fee. I can see why everybody else is at least at $50. I mean, it's almost ridiculous to only get $3 off of that for the time that our officer, which we have a full-time officer now, right?
Correct.
A traffic and parking, is that? or
Yeah,
parking?
community service officer, that's
Okay,
correct.
community service. I think it would make more sense that we look at even a little different schedule than this. I mean, $25 is just to get $3 out of it. I know we're not trying to make money out of it, but we need to try to cover our officer to some extent. And I made the remark to Mr. Barber before this meeting, if we have a reasonable officer doing this that isn't lighting everybody up for no matter what, this fee's not gonna even help cover. I don't think it's enough, I guess is my point. Thank you.
So just to clarify, if we move forward on this, that the new, like for time parking, the new, ticket charge would be 25 plus $12?
That's correct. The $25 amount would still stay the same, but the $12.50 would be added onto it as the surcharge that goes to the state.
Okay, I misunderstood that.
So our portion of the citation, that'll be passed on to the violator, yes.
Right.
So if they also use the online service, there's an additional $3 fee that goes on there that's already in place now. So the only thing that changes by you passing this evening is you take the 25, you're gonna add the $12.50 to every one of those. They pay the $12.50, that gets automatically transferred. Now you're taking 16% off the top of that. Now we're probably at $17 to $18 for every $25 citation, which helps recoup our cost and helps bring that along to offset
But you're
the
right,
expenditure.
right now we got about $3, because we pay the state
No,
fee.
I totally misunderstood, and I think I understand the fee at 25 minus 16%. I thought that was a fee schedule that you wanted to include everything, but, no, if it's adding, so if it's actually a $37.50, fine, correct?
Correct.
All right, I'm okay with that, all right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Well, let's give the public a chance to provide input. Is there any comment from the public on this matter? Seeing none, I'll take that motion, sir. Motion, a second by our vice mayor. All those in favor say aye.
Discussion one time. Does that $12.50 go on all these registration, handicap, and all that?
Yes, $12.50 to the 150, $12 to the 400, 12, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Brett? Yeah, is that right? Yeah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion's approved with a vote of 5-0. Thank you.
Ordinance number 1413, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Marysville, California, amending portions of Chapter 10.90 of the Marysville Municipal Code entitled Penalties.
Thank you. Now I'd like to entertain a motion to introduce ordinance 1412 for second reading.
So moved.
Motion? Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. First motion was to waive the reading, just to clarify. The second was to introduce it for a second time. Okay, let's move to item,
Mr. Mayor,
yes, sir.
can we make a
Yes.
really quick break? Because
Let's take, we've been here a while sitting down.
a little bit lengthy.
Let's take 5 minutes and come back. Look at your cell number. Your cell should say 913. Let's come back at 918, please.
Just in case. Yeah, right. I'm afraid to get up. I might not make it. Hey, how about a little smile? You're getting everything you want.
Why it's going to be lengthy.
Oh, yep. Oh, Dee Dee, that's why you were mad. One more and you were there.
Hey, Candace? Like you do at Hop Sing.
Oh, yeah?
Tell your mom and dad I said hi.
Are we ready, folks? That's our city manager, but we can move forward.
He went to get the attorney.
Let's move to item 10C, resolution authorizing city manager to execute agreement with Sapphire Marketing Group to produce 2019 Peach Festival event. Recommendation is to approve resolution 2019-08, and this comes from our city manager, Ms. Brown.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The agenda item that is before you is asking for the authority to enter into an agreement with Sapphire Marketing Group. As you know, every year, the city produces for the last 19 years, has produced the Peach Festival. And we are in need, as you also know, Shannon Carroll, who's here in the audience, former economic development specialist, produced the Peach Festival among helping out with other events as well in the city. Shannon her position with the city last summer. And so in doing that and preparing for figuring out how exactly we were going to move forward with continuing to produce the Peach Festival, we had a couple of options. We were a little bit focused on producing the Christmas parade immediately following the Peach Festival last summer, and as we kind of turned the corner on the year and started to pay attention to exactly moving forward with the Peach Festival, we had a few options. One of them did not pan out, and so we immediately started to figure out exactly who in the region could possibly produce this event, and the police chief and I both worked on looking at and inviting staff our marketing group to bring forward a proposal to us and to the council. And since and as you'll see in the PowerPoint presentation, the numbers that are in there for the budget were generated off of numbers that I received from the finance department related to projected revenues and expenses. And they used those numbers from last year to come up with an estimate for this coming year on, again, revenues and expenses with some, a couple of additions that they thought that would be, especially the sponsorship possibilities and maybe greater opportunities than in past years. And so, as you can see from their presentation, the proposal is for basically no expense to the city, reimbursing the city for its police and fire staff time, and if the sponsorship exceeds the $16,500 that is proposed in the proposal, a 50-50 split is anything above and beyond that with the city. We do have both Carrie and Dee Dee of Sapphire Marketing Group are here in the audience, and also, I don't know if the council would like them to go up and say a few words, or...
Do you guys have any additions to the manager's report?
Well, there was one thing that I wanted to add, if that's okay.
Yes?
This is Dee Dee Brady. She's my business partner. We have an office in Yuba City, and thank you for having us here tonight. The one thing that in our proposal that is not covered is city staff time for police and public works, and they put in a great deal to this event, as I recall, from helping put it on for several years when it first started, and so that is not in here. So that would be a commitment from the city council to cover those costs. Our goal is to raise substantially more money in sponsorships than has been done in the last couple of years. It is a milestone year, so I think that's absolutely possible. My business partner manages the Marysville Stampede sponsorships. First year, she increased their sponsorships by 60%, and I think that's more than doable in this situation. I think we'll exceed that.
So there's a conflict.
Yeah.
Yep. That's, I apologize, that's a misunderstanding.
What is it?
When I saw the expenses here, I thought that also included the staff, not the overtime, not any kind of in-kind, the regular hours that we spoke about earlier, but included the overtime expenses.
I don't have a figure on that. I know it was something that you were going to look into, but I don't have a figure on that and what that looks like. It's something that we could discuss, but the proposal that we gave you is actually our estimated time to grow those sponsor levels and make sure that we're taking care of the vendors properly and coordinating all of the aspects of the event with the city, including entertainment.
Chris, do you remember approximately how much overtime is for, the bulk of the overtime is the police department, isn't it, and public works?
Can we ask the city manager to use her microphone?
I apologize. So I was asking about whether, if you recall, I know that this is short notice, roughly what the overtime expenses are for the police department. And I don't know that we have fire other than your booth at the Peach Festival, and Public Works, if you have much overtime as well.
I can confirm on this one, there is overtime. I don't know a dollar amount.
Okay. Do you have any idea, Chris, of what?
Well, it's a city event, right?
Correct.
So this is a city sponsor event.
That's correct.
So it's not like we're waiving our own fees. It's different.
True. Yes, that's true.
And what my understanding here is that there's not going to be any extra outlay from the city, cash, right?
No.
And that and there might be revenue after they go over, hopefully over 16,500. Anything over that would be split with the city, correct?
That's correct.
So given that this is a sponsor's event, I guess, I don't see an issue with it because we're sponsoring the event. It's the Peach Festival by the city, right?
Just waive it, like we did on the other.
Well, we're not waiving to ourselves because it's our event. It's not a third party coming in and doing this Peach Festival. Correct? Okay.
Well, obviously, you can see the difference in last year's and this year's with a negative was some of those expenses were probably in that. Where this year at expenses of 27.5, I mean, if we're looking anything close to the Buckeye, actual expenses, I mean, we're looking, and this is a 2-day event. I mean, that.
Yeah.
So I think, I have to agree with you, the fact it's a city event. It's gonna cost the city within, as it always has. It is a zero sum from them, which is appropriate.
And it's no actual cash layout, hard cash layout by the city.
No, it would be the expenses of the overtime.
Right, that's correct,
Yes,
yes,
there would be
yes.
no cash.
That's correct.
That's correct, Carrie, right? There's
Correct.
Okay. So let's, I think we can move forward if there's any other questions? Yes, sir.
I always have a question.
Of course.
We have businesses, are you going to rent spaces on the street to vendors as well as the businesses that pay a business license?
We will be, in fact, we are discussing having a meeting with all the downtown businesses and trying to accommodate them coming out onto the street for this festival, since it is a milestone festival.
I have a philosophical problem when they have a business license. It's not you, it's up for us to decide this. I have a philosophical problem. People have a business license and we're going to turn around and charge them $50, $60 to put their business on the sidewalk. Something's wrong with that.
I agree.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that, because I don't think we should be charging our licensed business on D Street to be able to put a table out in front of their business, $50 or whatever.
I would agree, and I think that there's something we can work out with them to waive that fee for them.
Yeah, because.
And if they have a business license here in the city, does the municipal code prohibit us from charging them? I'm not sure what that language says.
I don't think it does, but the point I'm trying to make, it's hard to make a buck anyway, and we put another tax on top of them, it's not really fair. Why have a business license and I have to get, a vendor gets the same benefits I would without a license? Or
Correct.
with a license, excuse me. That's all, there's a gentleman out there.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Are you adding to this?
No, I'm asking, is that included in this budget that we're having revenue coming from the businesses?
I don't know how many folks from the local businesses participate in the Peach Festival. I mean, there might be, I'm trying to think, I know that the Brick tends to just open its doors. They don't have necessarily a booth because they just get people to go through and get their, I'm trying to think of any other business license in the city of Marysville that pays for.
Mr. Mayor, I think with it being the 20th year, and I think they should approach them and maybe get some on the street, we still have plenty of room.
Oh, there's plenty of room.
Put all the vendors we already have, or that they will approach.
That's right.
We'll still have room for them, and then to let the business people have the space in front of their place.
Okay.
I mean, it's not, I don't think that's gonna affect us in any way, shape, or form. And the only reason they're gonna probably be out there rather than other years is because it's the 20th year possible.
Yeah. Okay, so do you want to, thank you for any other comments or questions from staff? Okay, any comments from the public?
Yeah, just in my experience and doing over 40 events a year from Modesto to Reno, nobody gets a free booth. what you end up getting with that is pamphlets put on the table and they go back in and work. So you've got an empty booth with a tent. A lot of them will be $50, $75. There is a fee involved with everybody that's on the street because otherwise you've got an empty booth.
Good point.
I think meeting with the businesses in downtown, get them in the spirit of the Peach Festival. Let's talk with all of them and see if we can, for the month of July, for them to carry something in their stores that's peach related. I know the first few years that we put this event on, we didn't even take a vendor unless they had something peach related in their booth. And that's not the way the event has evolved over the years, but that was the requirement when we started this. And we also want to engage the local farming community. There was some discussion about having some awards for those who have been with us, like the Sidaros from the very beginning. They were the ones who came and pitched this with Andrew Coolidge and then the rec department that I worked for the city. We partnered and we pulled off the first several years with Andrew. So I think we can get back to our roots on some of that, at least with the local businesses, and get them engaged in the event.
That's great.
When did that morph into a city project? Because once it was a private outfit to Sorrows.
Yeah, soft council members, and they couldn't handle the pressure, so they just said.
I was kind of curious as when it morphed into being a city project.
I believe the city has, if I recall, they contracted with Andrew Coolidge to put on the first event. So he was paid his contract amount to carry out the event. So it was always the city event.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the way I remember it. And I believe we took it in-house under the assumption, when Shannon was the events coordinator, that there were enough events throughout the year that it would cover not only her, but a less expense to the city, was, I believe, how that originally came about. Am I not right, Shannon?
Bottom line, this is, this resolution to authorize city manager to enter into an agreement with Sapphire. What Sapphire is proposing is to take on the event, take the risk that they're gonna go and get the vendors, get the sponsorship revenue, cover their expenses, and anything above the 16,500 will be split by the city, with the city of Marysville. That seems like a pretty good deal, right? I mean, other than our sponsorship, again, our sponsorship's gonna be our overtime that we're gonna pay our officers and our reserves, to be able, so in a sense, we'll be a sponsor as well.
Yes, title sponsor.
Thank you.
Always.
So,
In-kind match.
any other questions or comments? Oh, go ahead, sir.
My name is Carlos Frescas, and I had a question on the amount that the city incurs as being a title sponsor, because I know that for the Bacchae, the city of Marysville is a title sponsor, and the Bacchae's one-day event had a grand total of $17,000, and it was about a quarter of the time that would cost the city, and that the actual Peach Festival is going to incur, because I believe the Bacchae Parade is from 10 a.m. to about 1 o'clock, somewhere around there, and if that's $17,000 and change, what is a two-day festival?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. I think the question was asked prior, and those numbers have not been designated, right? I mean, we don't have those numbers right now.
No, we will have them at the April 16th workshop. Special events workshop will be covering all the events that we get on a regular basis, fee waiver requests for, including the fees and costs to the city. We will separate those out because those are city-sponsored events, including the Christmas parade, but we will be doing that analysis with the council in a full workshop, and we have not developed all the multitude of fee waiver requests that we get across the city on an annual basis to the depth and level.
As Mayor Samuel had eloquently said earlier, that the Bacchae is Marysville, and I'm a little confused on the verbiage of saying that since the Peach Festival is a city event, that we're gonna go ahead and waive it regardless of the cost. And
Well, I think there's two separate things, sir, and I don't want to confuse the items. I think right now we're talking about the Peach Festival, but I mean, if you want to have a conversation about the Baccae in the previous conversation that we
But
had.
wouldn't they go hand in hand in the fact that you're
Mr. Mayor,
saying?
maybe you can explain the difference, that one is put on by a nonprofit, it's their event, this one is our event, a city's event. They're not both city events.
Correct, but both are for the city of Marysville. And so when we say that one is Marysville and one is for Marysville, I'm a little confused on the cost association of it.
So we can have discussions at some other point, but the bottom line, we don't collect the fees for the booth. We don't collect the fees for the participation of the Baccae Festival. You know what I mean? So we don't administer it. This particular event is different because we administer that function.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or public comments? Seeing none, any other comments from council members? Let's entertain a motion to approve resolution 2019-08.
So moved.
Motion, second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to it.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, let me just make sure I'm clear. What we just approved was that particular contract, correct?
Yes.
On only that.
Okay, let's move to item 11, committee reports. Any committee reports?
We do have two from me, if you will. We just completed the Parks and Recreation Committee and Parking and Traffic Committee proposal to integrate a new ordinance defining what the object of that committee is and the membership of it. So that's now is with my colleague, and my colleague here read the first draft on parking and traffic, and I referred it over to Marty, and it's going to go to the legal, and then legal, if this board here says we approve that, they vote it up, then we'll go to legal, legal will write the ordinance and bring it back, and we'll vote it up or down. So it's first got to come back to you guys to say, yes, we want to do this, and that's for both of them. We just finished the Parks and Recreation. My colleagues will be looking at it and making amendments to it. I'll do the same thing with that for you, and you can do with whomever you want to do with the rest. But it's got to go on the agenda, and you guys got to vote it up or down.
Okay, but I guess I want to see the entire warrant before
You
we
will see
approve
the
it.
whole,
Yeah.
whole thing,
Okay,
boss.
perfect.
Not boss, but chairman.
Call me boss.
No, it's not going to happen.
Any other any other committee reports? I was going to bring this last committee meeting. I participated in the Bi-County Homeless Services Commission, which is, as you know, is made up of the cities and county, both you and Sutter, and we come together once a month. One of the outcomes coming out of that commission is an ordinance that we're going to bring back to the city of Marysville, and it's going to be introduced at all the other cities and counties to deal with some of the management of our homeless populations. It's gone through legal. Legal has given input to it, and I believe all the legals in all the cities and counties have given their input, and I think it's going to be ready and coming up soon for us to review it, and it'll be great to have one ordinance that can it'll be helpful to have kind of the unified ordinance among all the cities and counties, because our homeless populations do interact, and it will also come in with kind of additional services. So when we need a bed in Marysville and we find it in Yuba City, we'll be able to kind of work together in identifying services for our homeless population. So it'll be good to have that ordinance. So it'll come up soon. I thought it was going to come up next week, but we'll see where it's at. I'm imagining it's coming forward. Do we know, Marty?
We, myself and the police chief have a meeting next week with the city attorney, and we'll be reviewing it, and then shortly after that, we will bring it to council.
Okay.
I hope.
Thank you.
Depends on what Brant tells me.
Any other committee reports? Let's go to item 12, council correspondence.
Mic's off.
Sorry about that. Ms. Judy Mann dropped off a letter for council regarding the historic fair. They want to schedule the event for May 10th, and in this letter, they also request fee waiving. And then the council also got letters of support from the following, letters of support to waive the Buckeye fees from the following: Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in San Francisco, Marysville Peking Sister City Association Incorporated, Mr. Yu, teacher at William Land Elementary, the Sacramento Area Formosan Association, Felicia B. Esquire, and Paul G. Chase and Associates.
Thank you. Item 13, city manager's report.
Just really quickly, I wanted to, as the council knows and city staff knows, I was at the city managers conference last week, and there were some really great topics in particular that caught my eye and I went to, included emergency preparedness, smart cities and kind of the future of technology in cities and how it's going to impact us, trends in cannabis, both legislation and what's happening in the industry. Of course, lots of city manager council relation workshops, which you always get at the city manager's workshop, and city manager ethics also is almost always covered at the conference as well, as a good reminder to us about what our job is in an ethical world, in an ethical way. That's it. That's my report.
Thank you. Council comments, Councilmember Baracoboli.
I don't want to harp on this, but I think this Buckeye thing gave us a major black eye. I think it's unfortunate, and I'm going to say we because I don't know if there's a lack of communication between the council and the staff, or if I'm not understanding the process. I thought we had asked about looking into these fees, and the next thing we know, they were implemented. I just want to make a comment that I think we really hurt ourselves with this one, and we need to decide where we're going. If it's looking at the fees, presenting them to us, then looking at implementation, or if we've already given the staff the ability to implement and I missed it somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Simmons?
I have a couple items, the comments from the floor. The gentleman that got up and spoke about all the empty buildings downtown and how he would like to take them over, those are private property. We know that, but to make a comment like that we could take it over, and it's just ridiculous. And that goes to show you the brain level that is being expounded by the homeless population. They think they can go in and take private property and make a house out of it and everybody lives happy ever after. That's not the way it goes. Also, he talked about the people living, the lady gets up, and we've had her here before, talking about how civic-minded the homeless are. Just take a boat ride down to Feather River sometime when you have a city sign and see how much garbage is there. May not be there now because the water washed it away. And also, as far as taking care of the indigent people, it's not a city's responsibility, folks. It's a county's responsibility. We cooperate with them, but the services come from the county. That's why they have the welfare department. That's why they have the other organizations. So to sit here and criticize the city council for not doing their job and making comments about that's totally inappropriate because they don't know what they're talking about. And so I have to say that because I see what the devastation is down at the boat dock, down places, they bring their garbage in. Anyway, I've said enough, but I just want to bring that as a comment that it's not right, it's not fair, and it's not equitable for the city of Marysville to get beat up like that. And I'd like to take your building and make a homeless program out of it. Would you like that?
No comment.
I'm not looking. You take out the gun.
Got a lot to say about that, but I'm not going to do it here.
Take your leader. I'll meet your leader later, right? Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Hudson?
I'd like to reiterate what both my council members, Buttigieg said. I was not super keen about the fact I got broadsided. social media and phone calls, my business and cell phone. Maybe that's my fault for putting it on the business card, but still. Yeah, I do agree with the black eye. Let's move past it. Let's figure it out. Let's not let this happen again. As for the homeless, I have to agree with you, Mr. Simmons, the fact that I'm more of a hand up, not a handout, but that's about all I got to say about that.
Hang up, hang out?
Hand up, not a handout.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, excuse me for response to that. I'm not that callous, but I just know what's happening, and I see it, and you do too. As a fireman, you went on those calls. And it's not all peaches and cream, as that gentleman pointed out.
Oop.
Peaches and cream. That's a pun for the Peach Festival, right? Thank you for bringing that up, Brad. You're a good man.
Vice Mayor?
I just want to say thank you for the presentation on the general plan. I appreciated that workshop time. And also, I know in the update that Marty gave us, she just gave that we all saw it, you know, the day by day, blow by blow with all the water problems. And so thank you for working overtime and all the crew down there working so hard on that. Appreciate that extra work that they put in. That's a big commitment, so appreciate that very much.
Thank you. So this morning, I had a meeting with Congressman Garamendi, and I brought our fire chief with me to kind of give a sense of some of the things that he presented last time, and some of the needs of in the future fire services. And but you know, I think part of this whole things that we do as council members and the interaction with the public or other folks is that, and Ron said it, I think, I won't say exactly how he said it, but I think we have to dream and start planting those seeds now, because we'll see some of that growth later on and some of the fruits later on. The more we do things that are well planned, that we're not just taking little here, little there, but we're doing something that is going to be big and it's going to be great for our residents and for the people that do business here. Let's continue planting those seeds. Let's continue thinking big, and let's continue creating relationships with people outside our areas, whether it's, you know, relationships with our local businessmen or folks from other cities or other business people. And in my mind, our job is to create those bridges between them and our staff. As we're giving them these plans or these visions or these dreams, that they can maybe use those bridges and relationships to start building the community that we want. I appreciate everyone's effort. I think all our staff work really hard and are really dedicated and are honorable in their job, and they really are doing the best they can with the resources they have to try to meet everyone's needs. As a council, let's be cognizant of that we have really hard working staff that are trying really hard, and it's really hard to have dysfunction among our council, and I don't believe we have that. I think it could be dysfunctional if we start going on our own ways and start pulling our staff different directions. I think that's where we start creating we slow down our progress, and we hit the wall where we don't update our general plan after 30-something years, almost 40 years. That's what happens when you have dysfunction. So I hope that we move forward and think big and continue planning for the future, because those seeds will pay off. Anyway.
I have one other thing, Mayor, I forgot to mention, and I know you can tell me.
Yes.
Why did not the city council get an invitation to write out #1 yearly benefit? I saw you were there. Nobody got an invitation. Do you know anything about that?
You need to talk to Carol
I'm
Ramirez.
asking, did any of you get an invitation? Here's a host city, we didn't get invited to it, but Yuba City did. Well, who do we talk to about it?
Carol Ramirez.
I can talk to Carol.
Your old coordinator
But I
of
think
Yuba
city
City.
manager ought to call her.
Okay. Very good.
Ask why we're off the guest list. That's the second time that's happened. Where did you get your invitation?
From Carol Ramirez.
Yeah, well, something's wrong there. I don't mean because of you. I don't mean that.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I just got one question on your final comments, if you don't mind.
Sure.
When you speak of dysfunction among the council with this new general plan heading that direction, it sounds to me like you're talking about if we're having disagreements.
If we're having what?
Disagreements. Because I'm not sure what dysfunction means among us.
Oh, I think dysfunction means
Because
what
I think there's going to be some disagreements.
Oh, there's always going to be disagreements. When I mean dysfunction, I mean if we start taking, I think there's been dysfunctions for a long time. There was dysfunction when I first became a council member here. I think it's taken a long time to get this body on the same page, to start thinking about the general plan. I mean, that conversation should have been had, and I try to bring it up, and I'm not boasting, but that was one of the first things that I brought up when I became a council member in 2010. We need to update our general plan, and it's taken 8 years to actually get to this point. I mean, back then, we didn't even have a housing element. So that means that we couldn't even go after block grants. We didn't even qualify because we couldn't even check that box. It took 4 years to get that housing element, for me trying to get push and push and push. So there was a lot of dysfunction, and that's what I meant.
Okay.
We're gonna have, we're not gonna view everything the same, and that's why I think we're so strong, because we do have different perspectives. But I think we're talking about the right things, and we're planting the right seeds. Talking about the general plan is a good thing.
Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Mayor.
Next. So let's adjourn to our special meeting of City Council, March 4th, 2019, 8 a.m. in the Wheatland Room at Yuba County Government, located 915 8th Street, Marysville, California, 95901.